Chapter 2188, Do You Have an Opinion? Everyone was stunned to see Wang Zongquan down on one knee. Wang Zongquan's physique completely surpassed an ordinary person's. Even the professional fighters of Fenglin City would have an extremely difficult time inflicting any external damage on him, much less internal damage. Yet, he actually sustained considerably severe internal injuries from Fire Dance's gentle palm strike. Based on his current complexion, he would most likely need half a month to recover from his injuries. This outcome was simply unbelievable. The only explanation anyone could come up with for this situation was that Fire Dance had utilized internal force. She not only grasped internal force at such a young age but also managed to injure Wang Zongquan. Could she be the disciple of some ancient aristocratic family? Chen Tianhe also could not help his astonishment as he looked at Fire Dance. Even with the help of modern technology, internal force experts were still incredibly rare. One would already be considered very talented to grasp internal force by the age of 30. Every one of such experts would become celebrities in the fighting industry. Even a top-ranking dojo like the White Tiger Dojo would treat such an expert as an honored guest. Nevertheless, Fire Dance had successfully grasped internal force at such a young age and even managed to heavily injure Wang Zongquan in one move. This was incredible. The only possibility Chen Tianhe could think of to explain this situation was that Fire Dance was the disciple of an ancient aristocratic family, since such disciples practically started training in their mother's wombs. These disciples enjoyed the best resources, legacies, and teachers. As a result, they generally grasped internal force in their teens. By the time they entered their 20s, they were already strong enough to rank within the top 20 in international fighting competitions should they choose to participate. However, ancient aristocratic families generally kept a low profile and never fought for fame. Hence, the general populace did not know about these ancient aristocratic families. All the same, the influence these ancient aristocratic families held in the world was not the slightest bit weaker than that of major corporations. She's an ancient aristocratic family's disciple? Xiao Yu revealed an excited expression when he heard Chen Tianhe's words. Xiao Yu had heard a little regarding ancient aristocratic families, so he had an idea just how frightening they were. They were not existences ordinary people like himself could come into contact with. Only well-established martial arts masters like Chen Tianhe had the opportunity to do so. If Fire Dance really was an ancient aristocratic family's disciple, then the Heaven's Rumble Training Center would truly become powerful. Even the Starline Corporation would probably be helpless against it. Meanwhile, at this moment, the upper echelons of the various training centers and dojos present in the hall had lost their complacent attitude altogether. Now, only shock and fear filled their minds. If even Wang Zongquan was defeated, then who in Fenglin City could possibly be a match for Fire Dance? Moreover, Fire Dance was still so young. She would definitely continue growing stronger. One could even describe her future as limitless. With such a talent present, who would dare provoke the Heaven's Rumble Training Center? After a brief round of exclamations from the spectating crowd, Wang Zongquan managed to recover slightly and slowly stand back up. Now, his eyes held only fear when he gazed at Fire Dance. I never thought that I would actually lose to a little girl like you. May I know which aristocratic family's disciple you are? Wang Zongquan asked politely, his previous arrogant attitude gone. Now, he was treating Fire Dance as his equal. Wang Zongquan was far more knowledgeable than Chen Tianhe, so he knew just how powerful the disciples of aristocratic families were. The moment Fire Dance sent him stumbling back, he concluded that she was a disciple of an ancient aristocratic family. After all, everyone from the younger generation capable of surpassing him was an expert famous throughout the country. They definitely wouldn't be an unknown existence like Fire Dance. Fortunately, Fire Dance's strength and physical fitness were greatly inferior to his own. Had that previous strike been executed by an expert of equal standards, he definitely wouldn't have been able to stand back up. Fire Dance's victory was due entirely to her calm mind and frightening reaction speed. Her grasp of distance was also frighteningly accurate. Had he known that Fire Dance possessed such abilities early on, he definitely wouldn't have used such aggressive maneuvers. Instead, he would have opted for a more secure fighting style. Then, he wouldn't have been defeated so decisively. However, Fire Dance was still very young. Her physical fitness could continue improving in the future. The same was true for her technical standards. Wang Zhongquan did not feel ashamed of being defeated by such a prodigy. An aristocratic family's disciple? The heartstrings of Zhang Tianya, who was standing a short distance away, quivered when he looked at Fire Dance. Both Fire Dance's appearance and body were extraordinary. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was Zhao Yueru's equal. Moreover, Fire Dance's martial artist's temperament lent her an additional elegance that Zhao Yueru did not have. If it was indeed true that Fire Dance had the backing of an ancient aristocratic family, then she would definitely be of great help to him in the future, if he could obtain her. Aristocratic family's disciple? Fire Dance, however, was confused by Wang Zhongquan's words. She then explained, I am not a disciple of some aristocratic family. I am only a member of the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. As soon as Fire Dance was done speaking, the entire hall fell silent momentarily. Impossible. You grasped internal force at such a young age. You also have that frightening reaction speed and a talent for combat. How can you simply be a member of a small training center? Wang Zhongquan was enraged by Fire Dance's response. If you don't want to tell me which aristocratic family you're from, just say so. Is there a need to humiliate me this way? While he could accept being defeated by Fire Dance, as a martial arts master, he definitely would not accept being humiliated. Moreover, what he was truly adept at was not fighting but assassination. Outside official settings, he would have plenty of means to kill Fire Dance without anybody tracing the deed back to him. Everyone present also nodded in agreement with Wang Zhongquan's words. A member of a training center? What a joke. Even the top-ranking training centers and dojos in the country did not have the ability to produce an expert like Fire Dance. I'm telling the truth. I am not a disciple of some aristocratic family. I am only a member that has been training under our hall master all this time. I can't do anything about it even if you don't believe me, Fire Dance said, shaking her head. She gave no further explanation after that. I heard that your hall master is just in his early 20s. If you insist on trying to raise your hall master's reputation, then I have nothing else to say. However, I will firmly engrave today's matter in my heart. Wang Zhongquan was now thoroughly enraged. However, with his defeat at Fire Dance's hands, he no longer had any qualifications to challenge Heaven's Rumble's hall master. Even so, he still had many ways to destroy both the Heaven's Rumble Training Center and Fire Dance. Was there a need for this little lady to humiliate him like so? Chen Tianhe could already see that Wang Zhongquan bore killing intent toward the Heaven's Rumble Training Center and Fire Dance. The man definitely wouldn't let this matter rest. Even a fool wouldn't believe that a youth in his early 20s could nurture Fire Dance, who was of roughly similar age, into her current state. Let alone Wang Zhongquan, even Chen Tianhe would become very angry if he were in Wang Zhongquan's shoes. However, just as Wang Zhongquan was about to turn around and leave, a crisp voice echoed throughout the entire hall. I am her instructor. Do you have any opinions about it? Immediately, everyone automatically turned their heads toward the origin of the voice, and what they saw was a young man currently descending the staircase from the second floor. This young man in black was none other than Shi Feng, who had just completed his daily training. Chapter 2189, Shocking the Audience. Everyone present inside the hall gazed at Shi Feng in astonishment. Wang Zhongquan was no minor character. Although he had lost to Fire Dance, there was still no doubt that he was an apex internal force expert. Even the masters of top-ranking training centers and dojos had to treat him with respect. Not to mention, Wang Zhongquan had been working as a hitman for the past decade. Even if he couldn't openly cause problems for a training center or dojo, he was more than capable of doing so in secret. Is this guy tired of living? He actually dares to come out now? Does he really think Wang Zhongquan won't dare to challenge him again? What bold words! Does he actually believe he can produce an internal force expert? The many experts present looked at Shifeng with disdain when he appeared in the hall. They all felt that Shifeng was getting too full of himself. Fire Dance had just fought a dangerous battle in order to pull the Heaven's Rumble Training Center out of a crisis. All Shifeng needed to do was lie low and wait for Wang Zongquan to leave. He simply had to be tired of living, to reveal himself now. Old Shao, is this the young man you were talking about? Qin Tianhe shook his head as he looked at Shifeng. He's far too immature and arrogant. Although he has the support of an aristocratic family's disciple, he still shouldn't have provoked Wang Zongquan like this. Although Wang Zongquan could not afford to run afoul of ancient aristocratic families, he would have no problems killing the other members of the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. He could also make it so that the deed couldn't be traced back to him. Even though Shifeng had already grasped internal force, it wouldn't change his fate. After all, according to the rumors Qin Tianhe had heard, more than 10 internal force experts had fallen at Wang Zongquan's hands, including apex internal force experts. So, he is Shifeng? Zhang Tianhe could not help but reveal some envy as he eyed Shifeng. An aristocratic family's disciple. The status of every one of these disciples was not the slightest bit inferior to that of an heir of a major corporation. They were existences that even someone like Wang Zongquan had to show respect to. Yet, despite having ordinary looks and an average family background, Shifeng actually managed to gain Fire Dance's favor and even her support. How could Zhang Tianhe not envy him? In fact, Zhang Tianhe believed there was an 80% chance that Shifeng's success in becoming an internal force expert was due to Fire Dance's help. After all, the legacies and resources that ancient aristocratic families possessed were far superior to those of top-ranking training centers and dojos. So long as one possessed even the slightest amount of talent, they would have no problem becoming an internal force expert. If Zhang Tianhe had obtained these resources, he would have most likely become an expert on Wang Zongquan's level by now. Meanwhile, during the time the spectating crowd was quietly discussing Shifeng had arrived at the center of the hall. Fire Dance promptly took the initiative to stand behind him as if she really was just a member of the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. This scene immediately provoked the envy of many of the spectating experts. Crap. What kind of luck does that kid possess to earn the favor of that goddess? What a lucky bastard. With an aristocratic family backing him, even Wang Zongquan can't do anything against him on the surface. That's right. If we could sponge off such a goddess as well, even setting up a top-ranking training center wouldn't be a problem. Many of the men present derided Shifeng, and as if they were afraid Shifeng could not hear them, their voices grew steadily louder as they spoke. To most of the experts present, being able to grasp internal force was already a matter worth rejoicing. As for setting up their own training center in a first-tier city and developing it into a top-ranking training center, that was something that they didn't even dream of. However, if they had the help of an aristocratic family's disciple, then such a feat would be a piece of cake. Now that Shifeng had Fire Dance's support, his becoming one of Fenglin City's powerhouses was almost guaranteed. Fenglin City's fighting industry might even have to adhere to his wishes in the future. Other top-ranking training centers and dojos also wouldn't dare to act against him rashly. Meanwhile, seated in a corner of the hall was Zhuolinxiu, who was quietly observing the event. So, that's the case. It's no wonder Zero Wing is confident of establishing itself in Fenglin City, Zhuolinxiu thought to himself as he observed Fire Dance, disregarding Shifeng entirely. With this, Zero Wing indeed merits the young master's attention. As the butler of the Five States Corporation's heir and an apex internal force expert himself, Zhuolinxiu knew a lot more regarding ancient aristocratic families than Qin Tianhe and Wang Zongquan did, so he understood just how valuable the support of an aristocratic family's disciple was. During the time everyone was discussing Shifeng, Wang Zongquan had also arrived before him, his gaze filled with disdain and anger as he glared at the young man. And here I thought you wouldn't have the courage to show yourself, Wang Zongquan sneered. Since you're here, do you dare exchange a few moves with me? I want to see whether you truly are capable of instructing such an excellent member or not, Hall Master Sure. Originally, Wang Zongquan thought that he would not have a chance to reclaim the reputation he had lost due to fire dance today. However, since Shi Feng had taken the initiative to appear before him, this was the perfect opportunity for him to do so and fulfill his agreement with Lu Xinglua to wreck the Heaven's Rumble Training Center's reputation, killing two birds with one stone. He naturally couldn't miss this opportunity. That won't be a problem. Only, Master Wang, you were just injured. Do you need a few days to recover? It won't be too late to spar at that time, Shi Feng said. No need. It is only a minor injury. I wish to experience Hall Master Shi's brilliant moves now. Wang Zongquan said. He launched an attack at Shi Feng without hesitation, not giving him any more time to speak. In Wang Zongquan's opinion, Shi Feng was simply trying to find an excuse to buy time and eventually let the matter be forgotten. He naturally couldn't let Shi Feng have his way. Meanwhile, the best method to get Shi Feng to take action was to leave the man with no choice but to take action. The spectating crowd shook their heads and sneered at Shi Feng. That guy is so dumb. Did he really think Wang Zongquan would let such a great opportunity slip by? Ha ha ha. He's going to make a fool of himself now. He's just a brat who has just learned internal force. Does he actually think an apex internal force expert like Wang Zongquan will be afraid of him because of a little injury? How foolish. Does he believe he can run rampant just because he has the backing of an aristocratic family's disciple? Everyone understood that Shi Feng was planning to get Wang Zongquan to give up on today's match with the excuse that Wang Zongquan was injured. Unfortunately, how could someone of Wang Zongquan's caliber not see through his ploy? Moreover, the spectating experts could also see very clearly that, although Fire Dance had defeated Wang Zongquan, she should have grasped internal force only recently. Her physique was also far inferior to his. Although she had indeed managed to injure Wang Zongquan, he should still be able to exhibit 80% of his normal standard, which would be sufficient for him to beat up a basic internal force expert. In the next moment, however, Wang Zongquan's fast and powerful fist suddenly came to an abrupt halt before Shi Feng's face, unable to move forward by even the slightest. How is this possible? Wang Zongquan stared at his wrist, which Shi Feng was gripping tightly, in extreme confusion. Wang Zongquan had given his all in that punch. Despite his injury, his full-powered punch still wasn't something a basic internal force expert could block directly. In his opinion, Shi Feng should have chosen to dodge or deflect his attack. However, Shi Feng had actually used one of the most impossible to execute methods to stop his attack, grabbing his wrist. Before Wang Zongquan could shake off Shi Feng's hold, Shi Feng suddenly tightened his grip and swung Wang Zongquan's arm as if he was swinging a sword. Immediately, Wang Zongquan felt himself getting yanked off his feet, then propelled through the air. For a moment, the surrounding crowd even felt a strong wind blowing past their faces. Soon after, a loud boom entered everyone's ears as the floor beneath them shook slightly. By the time everyone realized what was going on, Wang Zongquan was already lying unconscious on the floor some distance away from Shi Feng. The marble beneath him cracked. Chapter 2190, He is a Grandmaster. Upon seeing Wang Zongquan's body lying motionless on the cracked marble floor, the spectating crowd froze, and a deathly silence fell over the entire hall. A short moment later. How is this possible? This is a lie, right? Wang Zongquan actually got defeated, just like that. Who is this Shi Feng? The spectating experts simply couldn't believe their eyes as they gazed at the unconscious Wang Zongquan. This was an apex internal force expert they were talking about. Wang Zongquan stood at the apex of Fenglin City, yet, now, he was actually defeated effortlessly by an ordinary youngster who did not give off even the slightest hint of an aura. The exchange between Shi Feng and Wang Zongquan had been so decisive that it couldn't even be considered a fight. It was practically a drubbing. So many of the experts here reacted with fear toward Wang Zongquan before, so shouldn't he be very strong? Why did he get defeated so easily? Could Heaven's Rumble have paid Wang Zongquan to stage an act? I'm guessing that's most likely the case. Wang Zongquan is an internal force expert. On the other hand, that Shifeng is so young. Even if he is powerful, how powerful could he possibly be? Moreover, the fact that someone like Wang Zongquan even appeared here is very strange, to begin with. Heaven's Rumble must have hired Wang Zongquan to pretend to fight to raise its fame. Unlike the experts in the hall, the spectating fighting enthusiasts felt that Wang Zongquan had acted out a play when they saw him so easily defeated. After all, when Wang Zongquan was fighting Fire Dance earlier, they could more or less tell how powerful he was. However, when Wang Zongquan fought Shifeng, from start to end, they hadn't seen any hint of that power Wang Zongquan had displayed before. They felt that Wang Zongquan had deliberately coordinated his movements with Shifeng, jumping into the air the moment Shifeng grabbed his wrist and letting Shifeng freely throw him. The fight could not be any faker. At this moment, aside from the fighting enthusiasts, the training center and dojo members present also found this fight fake. The strength an internal force expert wielded far surpassed that of ordinary people. If Wang Zongquan had thrown his punch with his full strength, even an internal force expert couldn't have stopped his punch by grabbing his wrist. A fake match? At this moment, even Xiao Yu was dumbfounded by this scene. However, he instinctively refuted the possibility, as he had never heard about such plans from Shifeng earlier. Moreover, the Starline Corporation had been keeping an eye on the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. Only an existence like the Starline Corporation could employ the services of someone like Wang Zongquan. Most importantly, why would an Apex internal force expert agree to min his own reputation just to uplift the Heaven's Rumble Training Center's reputation? As Xiao Yu was wondering why Wang Zongquan would put on a fake fight, Chen Tianhe, who stood beside Xiao Yu, suddenly revealed a look of horror. Neutralizing. He is a neutralizing Grandmaster. Chen Tianhe muttered quietly as he stared at Shifeng, his complexion paling as if he had just seen a ghost. Neutralizing, Grandmaster? Xiao Yu momentarily fell into a daze when he heard Chen Tianhe's words. Compelled to seek confirmation, he asked, Master Chen, you're saying that Shifeng is a neutralizing Grandmaster? In the fighting industry, those capable of grasping internal force were considered absolute experts. Less than 0.1% of professional fighters would ever succeed in grasping internal force. For those that did, their understanding and usage of their body and strength would far surpass those of ordinary people. No matter where these experts went, they would have the qualifications to establish a training center or dojo and accept disciples, hence, internal force experts were labeled masters. However, above internal force experts, there were still neutralizing experts. Ordinary people would already be fortunate to come across an internal force expert. As for neutralizing experts, most ordinary people would most likely never meet one. Every neutralizing expert was a titan in the fighting industry. They were people who could contest for first place in international fighting competitions. The fame and status they enjoyed were far superior to those of people like Chen Tianhe and Wang Zongquan. If one were to draw a comparison between internal force experts and neutralizing experts, the former would be candlelight while the latter would be the blazing sun. It is possible, Chen Tianhe said hesitantly. Only, since when has there ever been such a young neutralizing Grandmaster in this world? Even the ancient aristocratic families are incapable of producing a neutralizing Grandmaster this young. Ordinary people most likely wouldn't find anything special about Shifeng's grabbing and throwing motions. In fact, most of the professional fighters present wouldn't. However, Chen Tianhe, who had already mastered internal force to the apex, could tell just how frightening Shifeng's usage of his body and strength was. First, upon grabbing Wang Zongquan's wrist, Shifeng had immediately redirected and nullified the force in Wang Zongquan's arm. Then, when Wang Zongquan put more strength into his arm to break free of Shifeng's hold, Shifeng made use of Wang Zongquan's strength and coupled it with his own to lift and throw Wang Zongquan to the ground. Although this series of actions appeared very simple, executing it within a mere instant was exceedingly difficult. Only neutralizing Grandmasters, who could push their muscles to the limit, could accomplish such a feat. What made Chen Tianhe doubt his conclusion was that Shifeng was simply too young. Even now, Chen Tianhe was considered one of the top-ranking experts in the country. He had also been famous for a long time already. In his many years mingling in the fighting industry, he had come across plenty of internal force experts of varying standards and even neutralizing grandmasters. However, despite his extensive experience, he had never even heard of a neutralizing grandmaster who was in his 20s. At this moment, aside from Chen Tianhe, Master Yang from the Extreme Light Dojo, Zhang Tianya, and the other internal force experts present were similarly gazing at Shifeng in astonishment and horror. Impossible. How can he be a neutralizing grandmaster? Zhang Tianya blurted out in shock. Ordinary people might have failed to discern the intricacies of Wang Zongquan's fight with Shifeng, but internal force experts like Zhang Tianya managed to roughly discern its crucial parts. In most people's eyes, Wang Zongquan's fight did indeed look like an act. However, this was because Shifeng's usage of his strength was too ingenious. He was already at the stage of simplifying complex movements, hence, his fight with Wang Zongquan looked very fake. In neutralizing Grandmaster, Shifeng is actually this powerful? Zhao Yueru could not help growing excited when she heard Zhang Tianya's words. Although she did not have a clear concept of what a neutralizing Grandmaster was, she still understood how powerful Grandmaster martial artists were. They were supreme existences within the country, experts that even the various top-ranking dojos and training centers feared greatly. Meanwhile, when Gentle Snow saw the exchange between Shifeng and Wang Zongquan, she felt an indescribable sense of shock and familiarity. This was because she could tell that Shifeng's usage of his strength and body very closely resembled the principles of the refinement realm and truth realm. It was as if he had just merged these two concepts and demonstrated them. Only, this should be a technique that existed only in God's domain. Now, however, he had actually displayed it in the real world. As for Zhuo Linxiu, who sat in a corner of the hall, he was gaping in shock at Shifeng. Zhuo Linxiu had never imagined that Shifeng was such a powerful expert. He was actually telling the truth. Although an aristocratic family's disciple would indeed daunt an apex internal force expert like Zhuo Linxiu, this would not deter him from taking action against one. However, a neutralizing grandmaster was a different story. It was no exaggeration to describe a neutralizing grandmaster as superhuman. Compared to Shifeng's identity as a neutralizing grandmaster, Fire Dance's identity as an aristocratic family's disciple was utterly insignificant. Neutralizing grandmasters were existences that even major corporations had to show respect to, because these people held massive influence in the fighting industry. Moreover, there were times when major corporations also needed the help of these experts. After all, the various major corporations' upper echelons were frequent targets for assassination. Only with the protection of a neutralizing grandmaster would one be able to guarantee their safety. At this moment, the various internal force experts present finally understood that Shifeng had not been lying before. Fire Dance's achievement could very well have been thanks to Shifeng's guidance. After all, it wasn't impossible for a neutralizing grandmaster to nurture an internal force expert. In fact, there were many precedents. During the time everyone was quietly discussing this situation, Wang Zongquan had regained consciousness. However, when he came to, his mind was a huge blur, and his body ached all over. He could tell that he had several broken bones. He would need more than a month to recover fully from such injuries. Well? Master Wang, do you still wish to continue sparring? Shifeng asked as he watched Wang Zongquan struggle to his feet. Chapter 2191, Fame Spreads in Fenglin City. When Wang Zongquan saw the faint smile on Shifeng's face, a chill suddenly swept through him, his body shuddering involuntarily. No. No need to continue. I admit defeat. Wang Zongquan said hurriedly, afraid that he would be executed if he delayed his answer by even the slightest bit. Although he had clashed with Shifeng for only a very brief moment, he understood more clearly than anybody else present just how frightening Shifeng was. It was no exaggeration to say that, if Shifeng had wanted to, he definitely could have consigned Wang Zongquan to eternal rest with that previous move. Now, when Wang Zongquan looked at Shifeng, he felt that he was seeing a humanoid demon. Aside from this conclusion, he could not think of any other possibility. After all, despite having wandered the entire world, he had never heard of anyone becoming a neutralizing Grandmaster in their early 20s. Moreover, unlike other people, Wang Zongquan had personally clashed with neutralizing Grandmasters before, so he knew full well just how frightening an existence they were. Neutralizing Grandmasters could no longer be considered human, they were superhuman. Even ordinary firearms were useless against neutralizing Grandmasters, as Grandmasters could preemptively take evasive maneuvers by relying on their extraordinary senses. Meanwhile, before a neutralizing Grandmaster, apex internal force experts like Wang Zongquan were akin to little children. Their life and death were no longer within their control. At this moment, Wang Zongquan started to feel animosity for Lu Xinglua. Had he known that Shifeng was a neutralizing Grandmaster, with even 10 times his courage, he still wouldn't have dared to kick up a ruckus at the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. Since we have solved your concerns, then we can discuss the matter of you coming here to cause a commotion, Master Wang, Shifeng said. As soon as Shifeng was done speaking, Wang Zongquan's complexion turned ashen. Even top-ranking training centers and dojos could not bear the wrath of a neutralizing Grandmaster. The fate of a lone apex internal force expert like himself went without saying. Not to mention, he was currently right in front of Shifeng. He couldn't run away even if he wanted to now. Hall Master, sure, just state however much compensation you want. I'll pay it so long as I have it, Wang Zongquan said with great anxiety. Right, I just received 6 bottles of the Green God Company's life potion. Let's add them to the compensation as well. Neutralizing Grandmasters were different from the average person. The amount of nutrients their bodies required daily far exceeded the average person's. Moreover, if they wanted to improve their physical fitness further, consuming ordinary food and nutrient fluids would no longer suffice. At the very least, they needed S-rank nutrient fluids. Meanwhile, the life potion was something even more valuable than S-rank nutrient fluids. In fact, these 6 life potions were the reason why Wang Zongquan had agreed to undertake Lu Xinglua's request. After all, life potions were extremely difficult to come by. Even neutralizing Grandmasters could get their hands on only a small amount. 6 life potions? Shifeng could not help but be moved. He had never expected Wang Zongquan to possess life potions, the Green God Company's latest creation. Shifeng naturally understood what was going through Wang Zongquan's mind right now. After all, Shifeng had had the fortune to meet a neutralizing Grandmaster in his previous life, so he knew that these Grandmasters were truly superhuman. He also knew that their nutritional requirements were different from the ordinary person's. Only, Shifeng wasn't actually a neutralizing Grandmaster yet. He had merely touched upon the realm after combining the principles of the Truth Realm and Refinement Realm. In God's domain, every player's body had long since reached an extraordinary level, hence, players could exhibit the principles of the realms of truth and realms of refinement to their greatest limits. The human body in the real world was very weak in comparison, making it impossible for people to fully exhibit the strength of these 2 realms in the real world. This was akin to running state-of-the-art software on an ancient computer. The hardware simply couldn't support the software at all, and the computer would crash when trying to run the application. The reason why Shifeng was able to apply the principles of the Truth Realm and Refinement Realm in the real world was mainly his having reached the Ascension Realm and Domain Realm in God's domain. Even so, he had already sustained some minor internal injuries from executing that one move. He still needed to improve his physical fitness further before he could reliably display the principles of the Truth Realm and Refinement Realm in the real world. Meanwhile, the life potion was something Shifeng had only heard of during his previous life. He had never actually seen one before, much less consumed one. The life potion was not sold to the public. It was many times more valuable than even S-rank nutrient fluids. Although the life potion couldn't resurrect the dead, it could cure all internal injuries and strengthen the user's physique. It was even rumored that long-term consumption of the life potion could rejuvenate the user. Moreover, these were still not the most important point about the life potion. The truly amazing aspect of the life potion was its ability to invigorate a person's brain cells, making cerebral development easier. Due to these reasons, after God's domain had spread its influence throughout the entire world, the life potion became something all powers fervently competed over. Those powers that managed to secure themselves a stable supply of life potions had been able to nurture a batch of peak experts and apex experts quickly. Shi Feng found Wang Zongquan's possession of 6 life potions simply unbelievable. However, Wang Zongquan misconstrued Shi Feng's comment as a complaint that this amount was too little. He hurriedly explained, "Hall Master Shi, this is really all that I have. However, I heard that 9 States City is about to hold an internal auction and that life potions will be sold there. Here is the invitation card I received. Aside from this, I really don't have any more life potions." Shi Feng could tell that Wang Zongquan was not lying. He also understood that it was already plenty amazing for someone like Wang Zongquan to obtain 6 life potions. After all, ordinary martial arts masters couldn't get their hands on even 1 bottle, let alone 6. "Fine. We'll forget about monetary compensation, but I need you to help me with a matter," Shi Feng said, nodding as he accepted the invitation. Wang Zongquan inwardly breathed out a sigh of relief at Shi Feng's words. He then said confidently, "Hall Master Shi, please speak freely. As long as it is something I can accomplish, I'll definitely do it. It's very simple. I want you to go teach Lu Xinglua a lesson," Shi Feng said, smiling as he patted Wang Zongquan's shoulder. Since Lu Xinglua had already taken the initiative to make trouble for him, Shi Feng naturally had to respond in kind. Although Shi Feng was currently slightly stronger than Wang Zongquan, he was quite inferior to the professional hitman when it came to dealing with people outside of an official competition. If he tried to take action against Lu Xinglua, his actions would no doubt get exposed very quickly. Not to mention, Shi Feng didn't have that much free time to take part in such matters. He had his hands full dealing with Zero Wing. This, Wang Zongquan could not help being shocked by Shi Feng's request. "Hall Master Shi, Lu Xinglua is the Starline Corporation's heir. If I do so. Since that is the case, let's continue discussing the commotion you've caused," Shi Feng said, his voice taking on a chill. If not for Shi Feng having improved sufficiently quickly and displaying absolute strength against Wang Zongquan, Wang Zongquan would have definitely continued trying to make trouble for the Heaven's Rumble Training Center even after suffering defeat at Fire Dance's hands. Hence, Shi Feng naturally couldn't let him off the hook too easily. Shi Feng did not doubt Wang Zongquan's ability to meet his demand in the slightest. As for the consequences for Wang Zongquan after carrying out this feat, this was not something Shi Feng cared about. "I'll do it. I'll make sure Hall Master Shi won't be disappointed," Wang Zongquan assured hurriedly while nodding after sensing a trace of killing intent from Shi Feng. Wang Zongquan had an instinctive fear of neutralizing Grandmasters stemming from his understanding of their power. So long Shi Feng wanted to, unless Wang Zongquan fled to the ends of the world, he wouldn't be able to escape Shi Feng. Compared to earning Shi Feng's ire, provoking a major corporation's heir held much lighter consequences. Not to mention, Shi Feng had only told him to teach Lu Xinglua a lesson, not to kill the man. If Wang Zongquan limited his actions, the Starline Corporation wouldn't go all out in dealing with him. In fact, the corporation would avoid making a huge fuss about this. After all, if news of this matter were to leak to the public, the Starline Corporation would become a laughing stock for its rivals. Moreover, Wang Zongquan was originally already furious at Lu Xinglua for sending him to pick a fight with a neutralizing Grandmaster. He could use this opportunity to get some payback as well. Upon seeing Wang Zongquan leave the Heaven's Rumble Training Center dejectedly, the upper echelons of the various training centers and dojos present promptly went to Shi Feng and Xiao Yu to congratulate them. They even sent the Heaven's Rumble Training Center huge gifts. These training centers and dojos no longer entertained any thoughts of causing trouble for Heaven's Rumble. In fact, they even showed signs of submitting themselves to Heaven's Rumble, a scene that stupefied the fighting enthusiasts in the hall, who all wondered what kind of background the Heaven's Rumble Training Center possessed. News of this matter quickly spread throughout Fenglin City. Chapter 2192, Seizing Fenglin City. After Wang Zongquan's departure, many of the training center and dojo members present were tempted to join the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. The various fighting enthusiasts present, on the other hand, immediately started applying to join Heaven's Rumble. Previously, everyone thought that the Heaven's Rumble Training Center was a sham. However, after seeing Shifeng, Heaven's Rumble's Hall Master, defeat Wang Zongquan easily and overhearing the comments of the various internal force experts present stating that Shifeng was a Grandmaster martial artist, they realized that Heaven's Rumble possessed genuine ability that was far superior to that of the other training centers and dojos in Fenglin City. Moreover, Heaven's Rumble was equipped with state-of-the-art training and medical facilities. Just these points alone already held a great temptation for the various fighting enthusiasts. After just a few hours, the Heaven's Rumble Training Center had gained more than 5,000 members already. As for becoming a disciple of Heaven's Rumble, not everyone could do so since Shifeng had set certain requirements. The Heaven's Rumble Training Center's main purpose wasn't to generate profits. It would serve as a talent pool for Zero Wing to recruit from. Hence, ordinary people couldn't become disciples of the training center. Moreover, the disciples of training centers and dojos generally enjoyed much better treatment than ordinary members. They would be taught things that were not shared with the public. The recruitment requirements for disciples naturally had to be strict. Even so, after half a day of testing, Heaven's Rumble still managed to recruit more than 200 disciples. This situation excited Xiao Yu greatly. Despite having managed the Big Dipper Training Center for many years now, he had never seen so many people joining a training center on the day of its grand opening. Moreover, this was only the beginning. As Heaven's Rumble's name spread, even more people would join. Afterward, so long as Heaven's Rumble managed to nurture some disciples that achieved high rankings in Fenglin City's annual fighting competition, the Heaven's Rumble Training Center could easily become the head of Fenglin City's fighting industry. As the Heaven's Rumble Training Center bustled with activity, Zhuolinxiu suddenly approached Shifeng. Zhuolinxiu's appearance had been completely silent. Most of the people inside the hall had overlooked his existence. Only a small number of internal force experts had managed to notice him. What a powerful person. His strength is most likely on par with Wang Zongquan's, Chen Tianhe exclaimed in his heart when he saw Zhuolinxiu approaching Shifeng. Wang Zongquan had an overbearing and explicit aura. On the other hand, Zhuolinxiu gave off a sense of emptiness and restraint. The two of them were polar opposites of each other. If an ordinary person were to compare the two of them, they would definitely judge Wang Zongquan to be stronger. However, those who had trained to Chen Tianhe's standards no longer judged people's strength based on aura alone. Moreover, concealing one's aura was much more difficult than simply letting it run wild. This was also a technique Chen Tianhe had been studying for quite some time now. Unfortunately, he had just barely scratched the surface of the technique thus far and was definitely inferior to Zhuolinxiu. One could say that, in terms of technique and spirit, Zhuolinxiu was above Wang Zongquan. Zhuolinxiu. Why is he here? Zhang Tianhe was stunned when he saw Zhuolinxiu. Unlike Chen Tianhe, Zhang Tianhe was not only an internal force expert but also the heir of one of Fenglin City's top 5 financial groups. Zhuolinxiu had once visited Fenglin City. Back then, the various financial groups of Fenglin City had promptly gathered to welcome him to the city. Moreover, the leaders of every financial group, including the Zhang clan group, had been present during this gathering. These leaders all treated Zhuolinxiu with great respect. As for Zhang Tianhe, as he was part of the younger generation, he could only watch the gathering of VIPs from the sidelines. Zhuolinxiu was someone who was only half a step away from becoming a neutralizing Grandmaster. Unfortunately, due to his advanced age, his physique could no longer keep up with his mind. As a result, he could never cross the final threshold and remained stuck at the apex of the internal force realm. Whether it was in terms of status or strength, Zhuolinxiu was an existence that Zhang Tianhe could only look at in awe. Now, however, Zhuolinxiu was actually taking the initiative to greet Shifeng. During the time Chen Tianhe and Zhang Tianhe were wondering about Zhuolinxiu's purpose here, Zhuolinxiu arrived before Shifeng. Hall Master Shi, are you free for a private chat? Zhuo Linxiu asked in a low tone. At this moment, Zhuo Linxiu no longer viewed Shi Feng with contempt. On the contrary, he now looked at the youth with a trace of fear and respect. Neutralizing Grandmasters were existences beyond the circle of ordinary internal force experts. However, as the butler of the Five States Corporation's heir, Zhuo Linxiu was quite familiar with the existence of neutralizing Grandmasters, so he knew intimately how powerful they were. Even major corporations would not dare slight neutralizing Grandmasters. Sure, let's head upstairs, Shi Feng said, nodding. He had long since known about Zhuo Linxiu's arrival in the Heaven's Rumble Training Center as well as the man's purpose for visiting. He also knew about Hanifeng's determination to invest in God's domain. Meanwhile, with how successful Zero Wing currently was in God's domain, the temptation it held for Hanifeng went without saying. Given these two things, it was obvious that Hanifeng was waiting for an opportune moment to make Zero Wing an offer it could not refuse. Only, Zero Wing's strength surpassed Hanifeng's expectations. Now, even Starlink could not make short work of Zero Wing and could only pursue a war of attrition. After today's performance, it would be very normal for Hanifeng to grow impatient and take action immediately. Shi Feng led Zhuo Linxiu to the top-floor reception room, leaving the training center's matters to Xiao Yu, Fire Dance, and Bai Qingxue to manage. How is this possible? Zhang Tianya gaped in shock at the respectful attitude Zhuo Linxiu showed Shi Feng. Zhang Tianya could tell that Bai Qingxue and Shi Feng's relationship was not simple at all. Otherwise, Bai Qingxue wouldn't have invited him to help the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. Previously, although Zhang Tianya felt that Shi Feng's strength as a neutralizing Grandmaster was indeed amazing, he did not consider himself inferior to Shi Feng. After all, he was still young. He was also one of Fenglin City's top fighting prodigies. He still had plenty of room for improvement and a chance to become a neutralizing Grandmaster himself in the future. Moreover, he also had the Zhang clan group behind him. Even though Shi Feng currently had his identity as a neutralizing Grandmaster, he would still need at least a decade to develop the Heaven's Rumble Training Center to a level that rivaled the Zhang clan group. Now, however, even Zhang Tianya's sole redeeming feature appeared laughable. The only person capable of commanding Zhuo Linxiu to pay someone a personal visit was Hanifeng, the heir of the Five States Corporation. This meant that Hanifeng was trying to make contact with Shi Feng. If Shi Feng had Hanifeng's backing, then getting the Heaven's Rumble Training Center to surpass the Zhang clan group would truly be a piece of cake. Inside the Heaven's Rumble Training Center's top-floor reception room. Mr. Zhuo, may I know what business you have with me? Shi Feng asked as he sat down. I am here to relay a message from my young master, Hall Master Shi. Starlink is not as simple as you think it is. Lu Xinglua is receiving guidance from someone higher. Sending Wang Zongquan to Heaven's Rumble this time was merely a test. Once Lu Xinglua has a clear idea of the Heaven's Rumble Training Center, I'm afraid he and the person behind him will take serious action. My young master advises you to be extra careful against Lu Xinglua, Zhuo Linxiu said gravely. The strength Shi Feng displayed this time was indeed frightening. Even an existence like the Starline Corporation would not wish to provoke a neutralizing Grandmaster casually. However, with Zero Wing standing in Starlink's way and forming quite an enmity with Starlink, it did not matter even if the Heaven's Rumble Training Center had the backing of a neutralizing Grandmaster. The Starline Corporation still had plenty of ways to destroy the training center in secret. Moreover, even if the Starline Corporation couldn't touch Shi Feng himself, it could still deal with the other members of Zero Wing. Please give my thanks to young Master Han for his reminder. I'll make sure to be more careful from now on. If young Master Han needs any help in God's domain, please feel free to seek out Zero Wing, Shi Feng said. He understood that Hanifeng was trying to sell him a favor this time. Moreover, Hanifeng was also finally treating him as a potential partner rather than another pawn or subordinate. I will relay this to my young master. If there are no other matters, I will take my leave now, Zhuo Linxiu said as he stood up, showing no intention of staying even a moment longer. After Zhuo Linxiu left, Shifeng sank into deep thought. Although his strength had already improved by a significant margin and many of the dangers he would normally have to worry about were no longer a concern, just like Hanifeng said, the various major corporations were not as simple as they made themselves out to be. The Starline Corporation would have no difficulty dealing with both the Heaven's Rumble Training Center and Zero Wing from the Shadows. It seems I have to improve my strength quickly, nurture more experts, and develop my power in Fenglin City. Shifeng understood that even though the Starline Corporation seemed helpless against the current Zero Wing, if it took covert action, Zero Wing would be helpless to do anything about it. The only way to avoid such an outcome was to increase Zero Wing's status and influence in the real world. Afterward, Shifeng took out one of the life potions, which Wang Zongquan had someone secretly delivered to him. He admired the icy blue liquid contained inside the glass bottle, then popped the cap and drank the liquid. He needed to improve his own physique first, above all else. Chapter 2193, Life Potion's Effects. The instant Shifeng consumed the life potion, a cool sensation spread across his entire body. Shortly after, his body started heating up as if all its cells had just gained new life. Amazing. My injured muscles recovered significantly as soon as I drank it. With this, I'll be completely healed in less than half an hour. Shifeng was shocked to feel his injuries healing at a rapid pace. The injuries he sustained from overexerting his muscles had been severe and would have taken at least 2 or 3 days to fully recover even with the help of the most advanced medical facilities in the world. Now, however, he would need only half an hour to make a full recovery. The life potion's effects were truly divine. Moreover, aside from it healing his injuries, Shifeng could also sense it starting to invigorate and strengthen his body's cells. By the time his body completely absorbed the life potion, his physical fitness would have definitely improved by quite a significant margin. It's no wonder life potions sold for such ridiculous prices in the past. With my current condition, if I use this long term, I'll gain the physical fitness of an actual Grandmaster within 2 months, Shifeng thought to himself, a passionate flame burning in his eyes as he gazed at the 5 remaining bottles of life potion on the table. Recently, his physical fitness had hit a bottleneck. Despite a greater training load, his gains were negligible. He would have to train for a very long time to see any noticeable improvements. If he wished to improve his strength quickly, the only way to do so was by becoming a neutralizing Grandmaster. Neutralizing Grandmasters were known as such because their control over their bodies had already reached the acme of perfection. This was especially true for their control over their brains, which allowed Grandmasters to accelerate their hormone production and metabolism, thereby further improving the body's performance. Meanwhile, the life potion would help him break through this bottleneck and further improve his physical fitness by a significant margin. However, each bottle of life potion was effective for only 6 days. Even if he used all 6 bottles himself, they would last him only 36 days. He would need a few more bottles to reach the Grandmaster standard. So long as his physical fitness was at the Grandmaster standard, even if his control was still wanting, he would be able to exchange moves with a true neutralizing Grandmaster. An hour later, seeing as it was close to 6 in the evening already, which meant that daytime was approaching in God's domain, Shifeng decided to make his way back to Zero Wing's headquarters and further strengthen the headquarters' security. Indeed, just like Zhuolinxiu had said, it was very likely that Lu Xinglua had sent Wang Zongquan just to probe the situation on Zero Wing's side. Once Lu Xinglua and the ones behind him were done with their investigation, they would most likely start taking action in secret. Hence, he needed to strengthen Zero Wing's security measures and its core members. Originally, Shifeng had planned to let Fire Dance and the others use the life potion as well. However, on second thought, he decided against it. Although the life potion was useful to everyone, using it on ordinary people and basic internal force experts was too much of a waste because the physical fitness of these people was still far from hitting a bottleneck. They had many other means to improve themselves rapidly. Moreover, through the experiment Shifeng had conducted using Wang Zongquan, he had confirmed that one could improve one's strength in the real world by reaching the refinement realm and truth realm in God's domain. By combining the principles of these two realms with his guidance and training, Fire Dance and the others could contend against internal force experts, even if they had yet to grasp internal force. If one possessed such combat standards in the real world, they could cope with many troublesome matters in the real world. Once he trained Zero Wing's core members to an adequate level, all they needed to do was participate in various fighting competitions and achieve stunning results. Once that happened, the Heaven's Rumble Training Center's status and influence in Fenglin City would increase drastically, and the training center would become the true leader of the city's fighting industry. At that time, even if Lu Xinglua wanted to, he would have great difficulty hindering Zero Wing's operations in the city. Meanwhile, to achieve this goal of his, Shifeng intended to prepare the Lost Town to receive more of Zero Wing's members immediately instead of limiting access to just the guild's main force. Having more members reach the Truth Realm would greatly bolster Zero Wing's strength and increase its ability to cope with the various superpowers of God's domain. After all, now that Stone Forest City was achieving such enormous success, the superpowers definitely wouldn't just sit still and let it be. After Shifeng finished updating the security measures in Zero Wing's headquarters, he logged back into God's domain. When Shifeng appeared back inside his special forging room in the candlelight trading firm, he suddenly felt his mind was more unrestrained than before, as if it had more scope for processing things now. So, this is the effect of the life potion? Shifeng could not help but be surprised. With his current state, he felt that he could learn even a silver combat technique. Previously, although he had obtained a silver legacy stone tablet, he had yet to use it even now because he already difficulty learning bronze combat techniques, let alone silver combat techniques. Even domain realm experts would have a very low likelihood of mastering one. The reason why this was the case wasn't a deficiency in combat standards but two other issues. The first issue was an inadequate physique. Executing a silver combat technique required a physique at the Tier 3 standard at minimum. The second issue was an insufficient brain capacity. Silver combat techniques were extremely complex. If one's brain was not sufficiently active, it would not be able to process the complex actions required to execute the technique. Of course, this problem could be solved so long as one continuously improved their physique in God's domain. However, a Tier 2 physique was still far from the point where it could lower the mental difficulty of learning a silver combat technique. During the time Shifeng was researching the benefits of the life potion, Aqua Rose suddenly called him. "Guild leader, I have two people here who say they want to meet you," Aqua Rose said. "Both of them are here on someone else's behalf. They say it's related to an agreement you have with the Midnight Tea Party's vice commander, Endless Scars." "Endless Scars?" Nodding, Shifeng said, "All right, I'll head over right away." Endless Scars had previously sought his help with a matter, and he had agreed to help her out in his personal capacity. However, there had been no word from her after that, so he had gotten the impression that the woman had already forgotten about their agreement. He never thought that she would contact him now. However, an agreement was an agreement. Since Endless Scars had sent someone to contact him, he naturally had to go meet with these representatives. He took out a guild transfer scroll and teleported back to the White River City Guild residence. Inside the top-floor reception room of Zero Wing's residence in White River City. Aside from Aqua Rose, there were currently two other people, a man and a woman, in the reception room. Both looked to be around 30 years old. Although the man had a gaunt frame, he gave the impression of a wild wolf. The aura he radiated was sharp and unruly in nature. As for the woman, her appearance was not the slightest bit inferior to Aqua Rose's, only more mature. She also radiated the aura of a predator. "Burning, what do you think is going through Scars's mind?" "She's actually wasting a slot on Black Flame," the other woman in the room asked the man sitting beside her, her eyes filled with confusion. "Although Black Flame has indeed reached the domain realm, our task isn't something that can be accomplished with just superior combat standards. In my opinion, Black Flame isn't comparable even to Lai Jia. I don't know, but the slot belongs to Scars. How she decides to use it is beyond my control. If we find out that Black Flame really isn't good enough, it won't be too late to replace him with someone else, the man named Burning Sea replied, smiling as he shook his head. While the two were conversing in private, Shifeng had entered the room. The instant Shifeng entered, the pair started scrutinizing him. Similarly, Shifeng studied the duo. Who are these two people? Shifeng was surprised when he inspected the duo using omniscient eyes. The man was a level 72 berserker named Burning Sea, and he had 5 pieces of epic equipment on him. As for the woman, she was a level 72 cleric named Frozen Gem. Although she sported only 3 pieces of epic equipment, the quality of her staff was indiscernible even with omniscient eyes. The equipment standards of these two players were undoubtedly among the best available in God's domain right now. Ordinary peak experts definitely were no match for them. Moreover, both players actually radiated an aura that was much more intense than that of a great lord. They also gave Shifeng a strong sense of danger. However, Shifeng couldn't pinpoint the source of that danger. Your black flame? Burning Sea asked in a questioning tone. That's right, Shifeng answered, nodding. May I know what business Scars has sent you two over for? Good. In that case, let me see whether you are qualified or not. Upon receiving a positive answer from Shifeng, Burning Sea immediately unsheathed the great sword slung on his back and sent a sword light slashing at him. In the next moment, the sword light split into 12 copies of itself, each copy seemingly having a life of its own as they cut at Shifeng from 12 different directions. Moreover, each sword light carried strength rivaling that of a great lord of the same level. All 12 sword lights attacked together like 12 great lord-ranked wolves pouncing on him simultaneously. Even domain realm experts might not be able to replicate Burning Sea's proficiency in combining a combat technique and a skill. Chapter 2194, Spiritualization Realm. Although Burning Sea was a Tier 2 berserker, his attacks were faster than even that of Tier 2 assassins. As if they had a life of their own, the 12 sword lights locked down Shifeng, leaving him no room to dodge at all. How merciless! Frozen Gem was surprised by Burning Sea's attack. She had never thought that he would be even more ruthless than herself. The combat technique Burning Sea was using was an advanced combat technique called Wolfpack and was his trademark move. When he combined it with the Tier 2 skill Chaotic Flash, even domain realm experts would have an extremely difficult time coping with this move. After all, this was not a move that could be seen through and blocked easily. If Shifeng wished to retreat unscathed in this cramped space, he would have to use a life-saving skill. Otherwise, if even one of the sword lights hit, Burning Sea would be able to capitalize on the situation and follow up with a series of moves, giving Shifeng no room to breathe at all. Against such an assault, even shield warriors and guardian knights would fall quickly. However, contrary to Frozen Gems and Burning Sea's expectations, Shifeng did not activate a life-saving skill despite the imminent arrival of the 12 sword lights. Instead, he brandished his 2 swords and met the 12 sword lights in battle. Sword's Orbit. The sword's orbit that Shifeng was executing was markedly different from before. Now, the technique looked much plainer and simpler. He also executed only a handful of slashes. Even so, these few slashes created a seemingly airtight defense around him, as all 12 sword lights had their attack trajectories twisted by an invisible force in the next moment. Like a pack of hungry wolves that stumbled across a mighty lion, the 12 sword lights took the initiative to detour around the swordsman. Spiritualization. His technique usage has already reached such a standard? Frozen Gem exclaimed when she saw Shifeng smoothly and effortlessly neutralizing Burning Sea's attacks. Meanwhile, when Burning Sea saw this scene, he promptly halted his offensive and quietly eyed Shifeng as if he had just found some kind of treasure. Amazing. I never thought that you'd already be in the spiritualization realm. No wonder Scars wants to give her last slot to you. Burning Sea raved in excitement. While Burning Sea was talking, Aqua Rose had completed the incantation for her spell and was about to attack Burning Sea. However, Shifeng stopped her midway, then calmly asked, "May I know what you two are doing here? Also, what is this spiritualization realm you mentioned?" Shi Feng was aware that Burning Sea's attack was some sort of test for him. This was obvious from how Burning Sea had stopped attacking as soon as Shi Feng neutralized the Berserker's first move. As for the spiritualization realm the two spoke of, this was Shi Feng's first time to hear about such a thing. Sorry. We are inviting you to help us with a very important mission. We cannot afford any carelessness on this mission, so we needed to test you. Still, I never thought you would be this powerful. As expected of the person Scar's views favorably, Burning Sea apologized sincerely. As for the spiritualization realm, it is a realm referring to the usage standard of combat techniques, which we discovered in God's domain. Of course, this is only a name we coined ourselves. As for what it is actually called, we aren't very sure either. I see. Realization immediately dawned upon Shi Feng when he heard Burning Sea's words. May I know what Scars is asking me to do? The only realm he could think of that could be found in God's domain was the realms of truth. Apparently, Burning Sea's group had yet to come into contact with NPCs knowledgeable about the realms of truth or find any related information, hence, they were referring to the realms of truth using a name of their own. It was also no wonder Shi Feng felt that Burning Sea's wolf pack was special. The Berserker's execution of wolf pack was completely different from the average combat technique. He had obviously applied the principles of the realms of truth. However, when Shi Feng thought about how other people had also come into contact with the realms of truth and had even achieved a certain amount of success in them, he was still surprised. Burning Sea, in particular, had clearly entered the truth realm already. This definitely wasn't good news to Shi Feng. Now that other people were exploring the realms of truth, Zero Wing's advantages would undoubtedly decrease considerably. The only thing worth celebrating now was that Zero Wing had a systematic training system for the realms of truth, whereas other people would have to slowly explore and master the realms of truth on their own. We discovered a mysterious secret land in the Sea of Death, and we wish to raid it. Only, that place is very special, tools cannot be used there, and everyone is suppressed to tier 0. We can use only the most basic skills and spells. Moreover, entering and leaving the secret land are extremely difficult. Contact with the outside world is also impossible. We have gone through great lengths to obtain the entry slots for this secret land, so we need the help of experts like yourself to secure the treasures there, Frozen Gem explained. In a situation where tools could not be used and skills and spells were heavily suppressed, players could rely only on their own combat standards to fight inside the secret land. A mysterious secret land in the Sea of Death? Shi Feng concealed his surprise at Frozen Gem's words. Could they be talking about one of the Thunder God's secret lands? The Sea of Death was considered a forbidden land for players because the Sea of Death was where the Thunder God had perished. The Thunder God had set up plenty of secret lands in the Sea of Death, every one of which contained a considerable number of treasures. There were even fragmented legendary items and peak legacies in some of these secret lands. In the past, players had gradually discovered the Thunder God's secret lands after level 80. The various powers then frantically explored these secret lands. Since these secret lands were one of the first few places where players started encountering fragmented legendary items, the intensity of the competition over these secret lands was obvious. However, the Thunder God's secret lands were located in another space, making them impossible to enter and leave through normal means. There were several ways to enter these secret lands, and one of the most reliable ways was by obtaining special quest items that were dropped only by level 70+ sea monsters in the Sea of Death and then completing the quest these items provided. Another method was by obtaining the entry pass through killing special sea monsters. However, these special sea monsters did not appear in specific locations. Even if a first-rate guild went all out in search of these special sea monsters, they might not necessarily find one. The last method was by obtaining the guidance of the Thunder God's legacy and then completing a series of quests, which would then allow one to enter the Thunder God's secret lands. Shi Feng had never imagined that Endless Scars would be lucky enough to be able to enter one of the Thunder God's secret lands now. Alright, but I want priority selection over one of the dropped items, Shi Feng said after giving the matter some thought. He naturally couldn't provide his help for free. There were far too many excellent items inside the Thunder God's secret lands. Every item in these secret lands was a treasure that could help improve a player's strength significantly. However, these were not the things Shifeng was aiming for. Currently, the various superpowers were keeping a close eye on Zero Wing. So long as these superpowers spotted an opportunity, they would surely strike at the guild. Moreover, even with the advantages Stone Forest City provided, Zero Wing was only capable of keeping itself alive but not contending against these superpowers. If Zero Wing wished to face the various superpowers in a frontal confrontation, the guild itself needed to grow stronger. Now that Zero Wing had a stable supply of internal members, it was only a matter of time before the guild gained a new batch of experts. The only problem now was that these new experts would be very underleveled and would not be able to exhibit their full strength. Although the veteran experts of the guild normally helped the guild's low-leveled experts level up, these low-leveled experts would still take a long time to catch up to the frontline experts. Meanwhile, there was one item available inside the Thunder God's secret lands that could help players level up quickly. It was also something that countless powers had sought to obtain in the past. The Guild Alchemy Workshop Design. The Guild Alchemy Workshop was an advanced construction that allowed the production of potions exclusive to guilds, such as the Experience Potion. Guild members could purchase up to 2 Experience Potions from the workshop every day. Moreover, only players that were at least 5 levels lower than the average level of frontline players could purchase and use this potion. This potion was a miracle drug that enabled new players to catch up to frontline players quickly. However, the Guild Alchemy Workshop design was extremely rare. It dropped in only a select few secret lands and special team dungeons, including the Thunder God's secret lands. This, hesitating, Burning Sea said, "We'll have to discuss this with our team leader. After all, this is something that concerns the entire team. The two of us don't have the power to decide on this." "That won't be a problem." Shifeng nodded in understanding. Burning Sea and Frozen Gem then went offline. By the looks of it, they were going to contact their team leader through the real world. After a short delay, Burning Sea and Frozen Gem came back online. "Guild leader Black Flame, I'm afraid we cannot agree to your request," Frozen Gem said resolutely. Chapter 2195, Nameless Team. Although you are an expert Scars has invited, there are still 9 other people in the team. Every one of them is an expert as well. If we give you priority in choosing the loot, it will not be fair to the other experts. Moreover, we are only working on commission. We won't be distributing the loot we obtain, Burning Sea explained. Hence, our team leader has rejected your suggestion. Of course, the remuneration we are offering for your help definitely won't disappoint you, Guild leader Black Flame. Our team leader knows that Zero Wing has recently recruited a lot of new people in the real world and is also being targeted by Starlink, so it should be fast-tracking a batch of experts through the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. Our team leader is willing to pay you 30 S-rank nutrient fluids. 30 S-rank nutrient fluids? Aqua Rose could not help being moved by Burning Sea's words. She was no longer an ordinary guild elder who was ignorant about the world. Instead, she was part of Zero Wing's core upper echelon and knew just how valuable S-rank nutrient fluids were. Originally, S-rank nutrient fluids were used only by fighting experts to recover quickly from a heavy injury. However, S-rank nutrient fluids' utility wasn't limited to healing injuries. If consumed after fighting an intense battle in God's domain, S-rank nutrient fluids aided in the development of one's brain capacity by providing the necessary nutrients. This was something Aqua Rose had personally experienced before. In fact, her consumption of S-rank nutrient fluids was a major factor behind the rapid improvement of her combat standards. Moreover, aside from herself, others such as Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, Cola, Shadow Sword, Alluring Summer, and Silent Blade also had similar experiences. However, S-rank nutrient fluids were extremely difficult to come by even if one had the money to purchase them. After making use of both Aqua Rose's and Gentle Snow's connections, Zero Wing had managed to secure only an additional dozen or so bottles. Since then, the guild had used up all its S-rank nutrient fluids, including the ones the White Tiger Dojo provided. As a result, the rate of improvement of Zero Wing's core upper echelons had recently been gradually decreasing. If Zero Wing could secure an additional 30 S-rank nutrient fluids, combined with the training slots Unyielding Soul provided, Aqua Rose was confident that at least she and Gentle Snow could reach the Flowing Water Realm within half a month, instantly increasing the number of Flowing Water Realm experts Zero Wing had by a large margin. Guild Leader Black Flame, this is the greatest sincerity we can offer. May I know what you think of this? Frozen Gem asked. It was not easy to find a spiritualized expert. Even experts like Burning Sea and herself had managed to reach the spiritualization realm just recently. Now that she knew that Shifeng was a spiritualized expert, she naturally wanted to rope him in. However, at the end of the day, this team of theirs was established by their team leader, who wanted to secure the item inside the Thunder God's secret land no matter what, and he was unwilling to give others a share of it. This was something beyond her control. Nevertheless, the price of 30 S-rank nutrient fluids could be considered extremely high. Even hiring a super guild's old monster would not require such a price. However, doing so would also expose the Thunder God's secret land's existence to the various super guilds, something they definitely didn't want to happen. Of course, if Shifeng refused to help, then they would have no choice but to seek the help of those super guild's old monsters. After all, once they secured the item inside the Thunder God's secret land, they wouldn't really care whether those super guilds entered the secret land or not. What an irresistible offer. Alright, I agree, Shifeng said, nodding while revealing a bitter smile. At the same time, Shifeng also grew curious about the team leader Burning Sea and Frozen Gem mentioned. This team leader was truly generous to be able to offer 30 S-rank nutrient fluids as remuneration. Moreover, this person's information network was very powerful. Shifeng had just resolved the problem at the Heaven's Rumble Training Center, yet this person already knew about the troubles he faced and what he needed most right now. As for the Guild Alchemy Workshop design, Shifeng had no choice but to think of another way to obtain it. Not to mention, the design didn't have a 100% drop rate. His request before was merely for insurance. Afterward, Shifeng signed a contract with Burning Sea. If the mission was a success, he would receive 30 S-rank nutrient fluids as payment. In the event of failure, he would still receive 10 bottles. After confirming that the contract was signed, Burning Sea took out a crystal that crackled with electricity. Golden divine runes were carved all over the crystal. The crystal itself gave off a faint trace of divine might. In the next moment, Burning Sea threw the crystal to the floor. Suddenly, the space within the reception room started trembling violently. A moment later, a black hole the size of an adult male opened up inside the room. Here's your entry pass. Let's go, Burning Sea said as he took out a token made of magic crystal and handed it to Shifeng. He then took the lead and walked into the black hole. Once Shifeng accepted the entry pass, he followed Burning Sea into the black hole, leaving Zero Wing's affairs to Aqua Rose and Gentle Snow to handle. After Shifeng entered the black hole, his vision turned black. When he could see again, he found himself in a desolate wasteland filled with electricity and flames. The wasteland was endless. From time to time, horrific lightning bolts would strike the ground, creating huge craters. Occasionally, towering pillars of fire would rise from the ground. The scenery here was the epitome of Armageddon. Be it the lightning strikes or fire pillars, even an ordinary person could tell that, so long as they were struck by these things, they would definitely lose their lives. At this moment, however, a large number of demonic creatures was actually roaming this wasteland. These demonic creatures were all level 70 or above, and even the weakest among them was at the Lord rank, with many of them being Great Lords and Grand Lords. Moreover, the instant Shifeng stepped into this wasteland, his tier was suppressed to tier 0. This wasteland was undoubtedly a forbidden land for players. If an ordinary expert were to come here, they would most likely lose hope immediately. After all, if a player's tier dropped to 0, the effectiveness of their skills and spells would fall drastically. Their basic attributes and physique would decrease as well. Under these circumstances, ordinary expert players would have difficulty fighting even special elite-ranked monsters of the same level, let alone lords and great lords. This would be akin to tossing an ordinary player into a team dungeon filled with boss monsters. The new guys here? Now that everyone's here, we can start advancing. At this moment, several voices came from a short distance behind Shifeng. Turning around, Shifeng noticed 7 people sitting on a gravel pile and resting. The group consisted of both young and old, male and female. Even the lowest leveled player in this group of 7 was level 72. Moreover, their equipment standard was not the slightest bit lower than Burning Seas. Endless Scars sat among this group of 7. Only, the current Endless Scars was a lot different from the last time Shifeng met her. Now, not only had her weapon and equipment undergone a massive improvement, but even the aura she exuded had transformed significantly. As if she were a demon that had just walked out of the abyss, her aura was filled with coldness and madness, entirely different from her calm and cheerful aura from before. When Endless Scars saw Shifeng, she simply greeted him with a nod. "Hello, I am the leader of this expedition team," Samsara, a white-haired man who appeared to be in his 30s, said as he approached Shifeng. The white-haired man gave off a friendly vibe. Shifeng did not feel uncomfortable in the slightest while in the man's presence. However, the white-haired man was actually the highest-leveled player present, having already reached level 73. He could already rival Fire Dance, who was currently grinding relentlessly in the bottomless abyss, in terms of levels. As for the equipment the man wore, even the weakest piece was level 70 dark gold rank. In addition, he also sported 6 pieces of epic equipment. The shield and one-handed axe he carried were also of indiscernible rank. However, even though omniscient eyes could not discern the rank of the white-haired man's shield and axe, Shifeng recognized them because they had been extremely famous in his previous life. They were a set of magic weapons called the Purple Thunder set. The set's overall performance was much better than that of individual magic weapons. "Hello." Shifeng nodded as he looked at Samsara, his mind filled with confusion. His confusion was because he had never heard of the name Samsara in his previous life. Moreover, the Purple Thunder set's owner should be a Tier 5 female guardian knight, and the Purple Thunder set had never changed owners, as far as he knew. The female guardian knight had relied on this magic weapon set to rise to fame in God's domain. "Our mission this time is to reach the Thunder Temple in the deeper area of this plane. You've seen the situation here for yourself already. Since you're a swordsman, you and Happy Art will be responsible for the healer's safety as well as supporting the others in the team. Do you have any problems with this arrangement?" Samsara asked as he pointed at a female shield warrior with a beautiful appearance and a magnificent body. At this time, Shifeng was only 1 level away from the level 80 threshold. Currently, however, he had disguised himself as a level 72 swordsman, a very standard level in this team. As for his equipment standard, he had matched it to the equipment standard of current Apex experts. Anyone using an identification skill on him now would find that he was wearing 5 pieces of epic equipment, with the rest being level 70 dark gold equipment. Unless someone in the team could see through the concealment ability of his fragmented legendary rank Nightwalker's cape, they would see only this information and nothing more. "That's fine." Shifeng nodded. In such a poor environment, fights would undoubtedly be drawn out and challenging. Hence, the healer could be said to be the backbone of the team. If the healer died, the team would not be able to advance at all. Moreover, the poor environment here had a much greater effect on magical class players, as their life-saving skills would be much less effective than usual. Hence, prioritizing the protection of the healer was indeed the best decision. "Since there are no problems, everyone, let's move according to the original plan," Samsara said to the others in the team. Upon hearing Samsara's command, everyone quickly fell into formation. The Guardian Knight Samsara took the lead while Burning Sea and Endless Scars supported him from the sides. The assassin and ranger of the team went to lure monsters over. As for Shifeng and the shield warrior Happy Art, they flanked Frozen Gem, who was the team's healer. "New guy, the monsters here are very powerful. Run to me if you find yourself unable to hold on, Happy Art said as she clapped Shifeng's shoulder in a friendly manner. Alright, I'll be troubling you at that time, Shifeng responded. Shifeng could tell that this beautiful shield warrior was very powerful. Her strength was most likely on par with Burning Sea. She would be treated as a genius even in super guilds, although he had never heard of the name Happy Art in both his past and current lives. As a shield warrior, she would be much better at tanking monsters than a swordsman like himself. Since the other party was showing him goodwill, he naturally wouldn't reject it. After Samsara finished making sure everyone knew what they needed to do later, he led the team deeper into the desolate wasteland. Chapter 2196, Monstrous Strength. Lightning bombarded the desolate wasteland. Even expert players, if they weren't careful, would be struck and turned to ash. However, Samsara and the others advanced through the wasteland as if the lightning didn't exist at all. Only the swarming demonic creatures gave them any trouble. Thunder Tiger, demonic creature, Lord. Level 76. HP 36,000,000/36,000,000. Hell Python, demonic creature, Great Lord. Level 77. HP 63,000,000/63,000,000. Even under normal circumstances, these demonic creatures were already tough opponents, but in the Thunder God's secret land, where players' tiers were reduced to 0, these monsters were even more of a challenge. These monsters attacked in groups of 20 or more and could easily annihilate a 100-man team of ordinary experts. Everyone, get ready. Old Locust and Formless, lure some of the monsters away. Everyone else, follow the plan. Samsara calmly directed his team as he watched the approaching demonic creatures. Leave it to this old man, the elderly assassin named Maple Locust declared as he charged forth. Meanwhile, the young ranger, Formless Arrow, freed his bow and fervently fired his arrows. He released 36 arrows, hitting 18 3-meter-tall thunder tigers, in the blink of an eye. Moreover, every arrow found its target in the thunder tiger's eyes, blinding the demonic creatures even if they didn't cause any substantial damage. Unable to see their prey, the thunder tigers halted their advance and swung their heads in confusion. Maple Locust made his way to the group of demonic creatures and used a smoke bomb, obscuring the area with smoke. The smoke drastically limited visibility in the area, and the thunder tigers were not immune to its effects. Meanwhile, Maple Locust quickly located the 7 demonic creatures he hadn't blinded and threw his daggers, each dealing over -6,000 damage. His damage was overwhelmingly low for a Tier 2 expert. The 2 Hell Pythons and 5 Thunder Tigers bellowed with fury as the daggers found their marks. Enraged, they charged through the smokescreen and pounced on the assassin. Even ordinary Tier 2 experts would likely die instantly under an assault from 2 Great Lords and 5 Lords, but Maple Locust had predicted these attacks and dodged the Thunder Tiger strikes. Although he failed to dodge the Hell Python's attacks, his timing with wind steps was perfect, and using the skill's brief invulnerability to block the Great Lord's attacks, he used the impact to pull more than a dozen yards away from the demonic creatures. The techniques Maple Locust and Formless Arrow displayed were frighteningly impressive. Their timing and use of their surroundings were amazing. Even peak experts would be shocked to see it. After all, both players were currently Tier 0, not Tier 2. The assassin quickly lured the 7 demonic creatures through the smokescreen and toward the team. Seeing this, Samsara, Burning Sea, and Endless Scars promptly aggroed the 2 Hell Pythons, with Samsara and Burning Sea working together against one, while Endless Scars pinned down the other by herself. The Shield Warrior, Happy Art, aggroed 3 of the remaining Thunder Tigers, and Shifeng worked with Heartless Sword against the last 2. Maple Locust and Formless Arrow then got to work, luring the other 18 Thunder Tigers away from the team. All of these players wore the best equipment available in the game right now, and although their tiers had been suppressed, their basic attributes rivaled ordinary Tier 2 players of the same level. Hence, they had no trouble pinning down a level 76 lord. However, whether or not they killed the lord would depend on their individual standards. The tier suppression in the Thunder God's secret land also affected players' skills and spells. As a result, players would not deal a lot of damage within the secret land. If players wished to increase their damage against these monsters, they had to maximize their efficiency with their combat standards, skills, and spells. As the team fought, each member skillfully combined their combat techniques with their skills and spells. The power they exhibited was far beyond what ordinary skills and spells were capable of, and they didn't waste a single hit as every attack struck the demonic creatures. As a result, the demonic creatures' HP continuously decreased. The team's overall DPS was only slightly less than that of ordinary Tier 2 experts. Who are these people? Shifeng watched his teammates fight, shocked. Could this be the butterfly effect? The fact that 5 of his 9 teammates were domain realm experts was already surprising, but the fact that these 9 players had reached the truth realm was even more frightening. However, aside from endless scars, Shifeng had never heard of these experts. While Shifeng had been the guild leader of a second-rate guild in the past, he hadn't exactly had access to a lot of information, but he had enjoyed greater access than ordinary players. Any expert capable of reaching the domain realm had been an apex powerhouse in God's domain, able to reach Tier 5 at the very least. However, Samsara and these others' names hadn't been among the Tier 5 and 6 players he had known about. Of course, Shifeng may find his teammates' performances surprising, but he didn't fall behind in this fight. Shifeng's tier had been reduced to 0 as well, but his basic attributes could still rival current peak experts. Including the fact that he was a level 79 player, he easily suppressed the Thunder Tiger before him. As he fought, damages ranging from -30,000 to -50,000 began to appear above the Thunder Tiger's head, one after another. How is his strength so high? Happy Art's eyes widened in shock when she saw the damages appear above the demonic creatures. Even Endless Scars, the team's strongest player, and her strength was on par with the Thunder Tigers. Knowing the woman's combat standards, this was why Samsara had her pin down one of the Great Lord-ranked Hell Pythons by herself, keeping it busy. However, Shifeng literally pinned the Thunder Tiger he faced to the ground. We found a diamond in the rough. Maple Locust, who kited a group of Thunder Tigers, could not help but comment when he saw Shifeng. With this kid, we'll reach the Thunder Temple much sooner than anticipated. That's right. We really owe Scars for this. It'll also be much easier to clear out these monsters, Samsara chimed in, nodding happily. The monster they had to deal with on the way was the most challenging aspect of reaching the Thunder Temple. Having a team member with such high attributes would undoubtedly relieve some of the pressure they had to face and significantly increase the team's survivability. Endless Scars only nodded in response to Samsara's praise, but even she was surprised to see Shifeng handle his monster so easily. Shifeng's extraordinary basic attributes were precisely the reason that she had chosen him to help with this mission, but she hadn't expected his attributes to be this high. She had drastically improved since they had last seen each other, replacing almost all of her previous equipment. She had also encountered a few fortuitous opportunities. Now, the power of her spells could easily overwhelm ordinary berserkers. And yet, Shifeng still surpassed her. It was unbelievable. Seeing the swordsman's powerful attributes also changed Samsara's attitude towards the boy. He stopped treating Shifeng like a simple mercenary. Instead, he entertained the fleeting thought of recruiting this swordsman into his team. Meanwhile, the team advanced far faster than their last visit due to Shifeng's contributions. After 3 days of fighting and resting, these players finally arrived before a magnificent temple. The temple was 10 meters tall, with a total of 3 floors. The very building radiated divine might that kept monsters at bay, creating a natural haven. Every member of the team had leveled up once after defeating higher-tiered monsters. Now, Shifeng was only 9% away from reaching level 80. However, Shifeng detected several dozen sources of killing intent as the team approached the Thunder Temple. Players? Shifeng mumbled as he spotted several dozen people exit the temple. Entering a Thunder God's secret land was not an easy task, especially for current players. Shifeng had already been surprised to learn that Samsara's group had entered one, yet they encountered other people in this secret land, as well. Moreover, Shifeng found a familiar face among this group. Hidden Soul, the player known as the Pride in the Flower of Seven Sins. You're late, Samsara. Unfortunately, the Flower of Seven Sins has claimed this Thunder Temple, a keen-witted man in his 40s said. Smiling at Samsara, he continued, hand over the Thunder God's secret key, and I won't hold you accountable for your previous transgressions. Supreme Sky. Crap. Everyone, retreat. Samsara shouted, paling when he saw the middle-aged man. It's too late. Activate the array, the man named Supreme Sky barked with a scornful expression. Immediately, over 20 Tier 2 assassins appeared around Samsara's team. They exploded into scattering blood mist. Despite the fact that players couldn't use tools in the Thunder God's secret land, this strange blood mist formed a magic array that enveloped the Thunder Temple and the players around it. Chapter 2197, Reckless. The instant the blood-red magic array formed around the Thunder Temple, Samsara's team lost 20% of their basic attributes. A blood magic seal. Samsara's expression darkened further when he saw the blood-red magic array that had manifested above the Thunder Temple. The blood magic seal wasn't a magic tool, but a special spell that players could learn. The Flower of Seven Sins had acquired its skill book in an ancient demonic ruin. Unlike normal spells players could learn, the blood magic seal didn't have a tier requirement. To cast, it required a minimum of 6 players, and the moment they cast the spell, they'd sacrifice themselves to the demon god to create the sealing magic array. The strength of the sealing array was relative to the number of sacrifices made. The more players that sacrificed themselves, the stronger the magic array would become. With the minimum 6 players, the magic array would be powerful enough to trap a great lord. Since the Flower of Seven Sins team had sacrificed more than 20 players to cast the spell, not even a mythic monster could break out. Why should we fear them, leader? They may outnumber us, but we're no pushovers. Happy Art said. Every member of their team was even stronger than God's domain's peak experts. Even the various superpowers would fear them. Now, without the sacrificial assassins, the enemy team only had a little over 30 players. Even under the magic array suppression facing the Flower of Seven Sins experts, their team shouldn't have any issue killing these people. They didn't need to flee. Art, the situation is not as simple as you assume. These people are the Flower of Seven Sins cadre. Even the weakest of them can rival peak experts, Frozen Gem explained as she stared down their enemies. Moreover, their leader is Supreme Sky, one of the Flower's 7 commanders. She wouldn't have paid their opponent any mind if they were facing another superpowers expert team, even a 100-man team, but these weren't some random nobodies. Every one of them was just as strong as she was. One of the Flower of Seven Sins' commanders. Happy Art felt a chill crawl down her spine, and her expression changed. She was not some ignorant player. In fact, she had far more access to information than superpowers peak experts. She was, after all, one of the top prodigies the Super Guild, 13 Thrones had nurtured. 13 Thrones was even stronger than Battle Wolves, and it had far more information than most superpowers. The Flower of Seven Sins, however, was a transcendental assassin organization. Countless experts worked for the organization, and its inner structure was a mystery. Even until now, the various super guilds knew very little about the Flower of Seven Sins. They didn't even know how many cadres worked for the organization. Information about the Flowers of Seven Sins' 7 commanders, who held the most power within the organization, was scarce. Most players only knew the identities of 3 commanders, all of which possessed unfathomable strength. Even the various super guilds' old monsters feared them. With Happy Art's current strength, she would be fortunate if she could last 2 or 3 moves against one of these commanders. Happy Art had never realized that Supreme Sky was one of these 7 commanders. I already told you that you can't get away from me, Samsara. Now, are you going to hand the key over willingly, or must I take it from you? Supreme Sky asked. What's the point of wasting your words on them, Brother Sky? Let's just kill them and take everything they have, a level 74 male berserker beside Supreme Sky said, licking his lips greedily as he watched Samsara's group. The berserker wore a set of white bone armor and carried 2 dark blue greatswords across his back. That's right. They're merely a bunch of reckless fools. Since they have designs on what belongs to the Flower of 7 Sins, we need to teach them a lesson, a level 74 female elementalist wielding an icy blue staff commented indifferently. The pressure Samsara and his team felt doubled when these 2 players had spoken, and their expressions had darkened even further. Both players were members of the Flower's senior cadre. The man was called Sandbones, and he was both extremely strong and talented. Recently, he had single-handedly killed a heavily guarded upper echelon from a super guild, as well as 2 domain realm experts. The woman was Diverging Phoenix. Although she rarely took action, she had once killed a superpower's 100-man team. Moreover, the team's leader had been a domain realm expert. Although the superpower in question tried to avenge their fallen members, dispatching multiple 1,000-man teams to hunt this woman down, it had only suffered, never accomplishing anything. In the end, the superpower had been forced to give up its pursuit. Both players were deadly when they operated alone, but if they cooperated, they'd be an absolute nightmare. I'll give you the Thunder God's secret key, but you have to promise to let these people leave. They have nothing to do with this, Samsara said. As he gazed at the 30-plus experts behind Supreme Sky, he knew that he would not escape them today. He wasn't optimistic about their chances if they stood their ground and fought Supreme Sky's team either. Furthermore, the Thunder God's secret key had a 20% to 30% chance of dropping if he died, and with the Flower of 7 Sins capabilities, they could likely increase that drop rate. Rather than risk losing everything, he should cut their losses. Leader? Burning Sea gave Samsara an anxious look. Burning Sea knew just how much time and resources Samsara had invested into obtaining the Thunder God's secret key, which had the potential of leading them to an ancient god's legacy and treasures. However, Samsara was willing to give all of that up to someone else. Since you're willing to hand over the key, I can let them off the hook, but each of them must offer 2 epic items. First, Supreme Sky agreed as he eyed Burning Sea and the others, his voice clearly hinting that there was no room for negotiation. Hearing this, Samsara and his teammates frowned. Even the various superpowers valued epic items, and handing over 2 such items was akin to having their combat power. This is daylight robbery, Supreme Sun. Even if we die, we'll, at most, lose 1 epic equipment. We might as well fight if you're demanding such a high price. You won't get off so easily, either. I am one of 13 Throne's internal core members, and the guild won't let this matter rest. Happy Art denounced. Although the Flower of 7 Sins had a numerical advantage, she and her teammates were no weaklings. If they were going to suffer so grievously regardless of what choice they made, they might as well take some of these players down with them. Furthermore, if they died, they'd only lose 1 piece of epic equipment each. They might only lose a piece of dark gold equipment if they were lucky. The moment Happy Art finished speaking, Endless Scars and the others, who were familiar with the Flower of 7 Sins, inwardly shook their heads and frowned. At the end of the day, Happy Art was still too young. She had been protected by her super guild, so she wasn't aware of the Flower of 7 Sins' true power. Trapped within this seal, the Flower of 7 Sins members likely had a way to resurrect them. If they truly fought these players, they'd likely at least die twice. Moreover, each death would incur a more severe penalty than normal. Is that so? Then, why don't we put your conviction to the test? Supreme Sky said, laughing at Happy Art. Chapter 2198, Black Flame Takes Action. The Flower of 7 Sins members unsheathed their weapons, and the killing intent they radiated skyrocketed. Even Happy Art paled as their powerful auras washed over her. These players had intentionally suppressed their auras previously, so Happy Art hadn't realized what was so special about them, but now, she knew that every one of them was a threat to her life. She couldn't even imagine what kind of combat power all 30-plus players could display if they attacked together. You aim for mutual destruction? With just the 10 of you? Sandbone laughed at Happy Art. Brother Sky was doing you a favor by letting you offer 2 epic items, yet you don't know how to cherish such a thing. Not even all of the old monsters in your 13 thrones would dare utter a word before Brother Sky. Samsara and his team did nothing to refute Sandbone's arrogant claim. What Sandbone had said was indeed true. Although 13 Thrones was a veteran super guild, and its old monsters were amazing, they were nothing compared to Supreme Sky and the Flower of 7 Sins. Even if Supreme Sky killed its guild leader, 13 Thrones could do nothing but endure, much less if he killed a budding prodigy like Happy Art. Only the top 5 super guilds had any hope of picking a fight with the Flower of 7 Sins. Samsara, the young lady on your team is quite interesting to be brave enough to challenge me, Supreme Sky said. However, he did not issue the order to attack. Instead, he shifted his gaze toward Happy Art and laughed, saying, "It's been many years since I've faced such a situation. It really makes me feel nostalgic. Let's forget about the 2 epic items. Each of you can hand over a single epic item and leave, but as for the little girl, she'll have to give me 4 items. You." 11 Happy Art could feel rage boil within her. Supreme Sky was clearly toying with her. Don't involve others in your vendetta with me, Supreme Sky. Even if you have a way to increase the Thunder God's secret key's drop rate, you're not guaranteed to get it. Samsara snarled. If he instructed his team members to give in to Supreme Sky's demands, their reputation would be in tatters. Samsara, don't offer worthless threats. Do you think I would trap you here without preparing properly? Supreme Sky asked as he glanced at Samsara. The moment the magic array activated, the blood curse affected every one of you. Your death penalties have been increased by 300%, and any special item that has a chance of dropping upon death is now guaranteed to drop. Once you're dead, I can forcefully resurrect you once. Do you think it'll really be so hard for me to obtain that key? Since you have refused the opportunity one so graciously offered, you can sacrifice your lives. After saying so, Supreme Sky waved a hand. Immediately, Sandbone and the other experts behind Supreme Sky charged at Samsara's group. It seems we have no choice but to fight. As Samsara watched the Flower of 7 Sins members rush at his team, he issued a command in the team chat. We're adjusting our formation. Art, you and I will stand at the forefront. Old Locust, protect Gem. Formless, support Scars. I've been waiting for you to say that, leader. I've grown bored of fighting monsters. I finally get to play with some peak experts. Formless Arrow exclaimed. That's right. It's not every day that we get to meet a commander of the Flower of 7 Sins. I finally get the chance to see the flower's rumored strength, Heartless Sword commented, clearly anticipating the fight. The Flower of 7 Sins had always been incomparably mysterious. Most of the organization's outer members carried out its commissions. The Flower's inner members rarely took action, and cadre members rarely ever exposed themselves to the public. To battle maniacs like Heartless Sword, fighting so many cadre members from the Flower of 7 Sins was a dream. My apologies, Black Flame. You've just joined the team, yet we've already dragged you into such a situation, Samsara sincerely apologized to Shurfeng. Endless Scars couldn't help but do the same. She was responsible for introducing Shurfeng to the team, after all. She had never thought that they'd become embroiled in such a dangerous predicament. However, before Samsara and Endless Scars could say anything more, Sandbone and his comrades were already within 30 yards of the team. Over a dozen ranged players from the Flower of 7 Sins immediately launched their attacks, sending hundreds of spells and arrows, all of which were incredibly accurate, flying towards Samsara and his teammates. As if they possessed a life of their own, they danced in the air, making it difficult for anyone to predict their trajectories. Happy Art, who had already reached the Void Realm, felt an immense amount of pressure bear down on her. She activated Shield Wall and focused her attention on dodging the incoming attacks, but even so, she had been struck 3 times and lost a considerable amount of HP. Samsara's situation was only slightly better, but when a few combination attacks struck, he stumbled backward as damages in the hundreds appeared above his head. When Formless Arrow tried to fire counterattacks, his arrows, which could pinpoint monsters' weaknesses, were utterly useless against Sandbone and the others. His enemies either dodged or blocked his arrows, failing to deal any damage. The difference between the two sides' combat power was obvious at a glance. Before Formless Arrow could fire a third volley, Sandbone and a dozen other melee players reached Samsara and Happy Art. 3 Flowers members worked together to pin down Samsara, and with the support from their ranged players, Samsara wasn't able to break free from their encirclement. 3 other experts pushed back Burning Sea. Although Endless Scars wanted to help Burning Sea and Samsara, Diverging Phoenix sniped at her from a distance, and she couldn't afford to split her attention. Meanwhile, Sandbone reached Happy Art, swinging both of his greatswords at the young woman. Chaos Slash. The 2 greatswords transformed into 16 phantoms, each flying toward Happy Art's blind spots like cunning snakes. Players' tears were reduced to 0 in the Thunder God's secret land, but all 16 of Sandbone's attacks were capable of causing sonic booms. His strength was definitely on par with the great lords of the same level. Seeing this, Happy Art quickly adjusted her footwork and tried to deflect the attacks. "You're overestimating yourself." Sandbone sneered as he abruptly altered his attack trajectories, ensuring that Happy Art could only block them, not deflect them. Happy Art's defense was thorough, but Sandbone's combat standards and basic attributes were higher. When his attacks collided with her shield, they gradually shook apart her defensive stance. After taking a dozen or so hits, Happy Art finally exposed a hole in her defense, allowing one of the greatswords to slip past her shield. But just before the greatsword bit into Happy Art, a blue longsword stopped the weapon 3 inches away from the girl's side, and no matter how Sandbone pushed, he couldn't budge his weapon an inch farther. The unexpected development surprised Sandbone. His slash had contained a Grand Lord strength. No one inside the Thunder God's secret land should be able to block his attack, yet when his greatsword had met the blue longsword, he felt as if he had struck an impenetrable wall. Before Sandbone could react, another blue longsword flew toward him. On instinct, Sandbone brandished his other greatsword to defend himself. Boom! The impact forced Sandbone to stumble 2 steps back, the greatsword in his hand trembling violently. "Who are you?" Sandbone demanded, staring at the figure that had appeared beside Happy Art with a seriously unhappy expression. Anyone that could neutralize his attack and wielded even greater strength than his wasn't an ordinary expert. Not even Samsara could perform the feat. Black Flame. Chapter 2199. Suppressing the Mighty with Technique. Black Flame? Sandbone's lips curled slightly when he heard the name, a trace of excitement flashing in his eyes. "So, you're the guild leader of Zero Wing, the guild that foiled one of our previous operations. I've heard that you've defeated Sword Demon. It seems the rumors were true. With such strength, you qualify as a serious opponent." After saying so, Sandbone's aura transformed. If he had felt like a tiger, freed from its cage, he now felt like the Commotion. Despite the lack of aura, great danger hid within him. "Be careful, Black Flame. His attack trajectories constantly change and are unpredictable," Happy Art hurriedly warned Shurfeng when she noticed the transformation to Sandbone's aura. The fact that Shurfeng had saved her and that his strength was higher than Sandbone's had surprised her, but she had learned just how frightening this berserker was after her brief clash with the man. Experts like her were stronger than ordinary experts because they could sense an enemy's attack trajectories and defend themselves or launch fatal counterattacks. However, she had been overwhelmed against Sandbone's assault. She couldn't predict any of his trajectories and as a result, couldn't defend herself effectively. If a shield-wielding shield warrior had struggled to block Sandbone's attacks, then melee classes without shields, like berserkers, swordsmen, and assassins, would have an even more difficult time fighting this flower's member. But before Happy Art could finish her warning, Sandbone had activated Charge against Shifeng, transforming into a blur before he reached his target. The charge skill was guaranteed to inflict the fainted debuff. Normally, ordinary experts avoided the debuff by activating a skill that made them immune, but Shifeng was quite familiar with God's Domain's various main classes. He knew that the fainted debuff would not take effect until less than 1 yard separated the user and their target. Hence, Shifeng responded with a slash. Shadow Blade. Multiple sword lights cut at Sandbone. Players, including Domain Realm experts, in the midst of activating Charge couldn't easily move while using the skill. Sandbone had no hope of stopping all 10 of Shifeng's attacks, each of which had enough power to make a great lord stumble. In a clash between experts of their standards, the slightest sign of weakness could be fatal. Knowing this, Sandbone forcibly cancelled his charge and followed up with a whirlwind slash, deflecting all of the incoming sword lights with his greatswords. Meanwhile, he relied on his forward momentum to reach Shifeng. Suddenly, Sandbone's 2 greatswords merged, and the resulting weapon radiated a blue glow. He then swung the glowing greatsword at Shifeng. The 2 swords merged. Happy Art was stunned. Aside from specific teleportation stones that only dropped in the secret land, tools couldn't be used in the Thunder God's secret land. This included weapons and equipment's additional skills. However, Sandbone's 2 greatswords had merged into one powerful weapon. It was unbelievable. The glowing greatsword was so powerful that space around it trembled. It definitely contained more power than a great lord. As the greatsword was about to smash into Shifeng, it transformed into 4 clones of itself. Even a Domain Realm expert would struggle to respond to such an abrupt change. Weapon merging and quadruple shadow slash. Shifeng also could not help his surprise to see the 4 sword lights fly toward him. Weapon merging was a super rare skill for the Berserker class, one that would be useful even after reaching Tier 5. The skill was even rarer than a fragmented legendary item, and it was so powerful because it allowed the user to elevate their weapon's quality by 1 rank. If the user used weapon merging on 2 dark gold weapons, they would become a single epic weapon. If the user wielded 2 epic weapons, however, the result would be a fragmented legendary weapon. The only downside to the skill was its short, 20-second duration. Of course, the resulting combat power from combining 2 epic weapons into a fragmented legendary weapon was no laughing matter. In a fight between peak experts, the sudden increase could decide the fight's outcome in an instant. Fortunately, weapon merging could, at most, produce a fragmented legendary weapon. If it were possible to create a legendary weapon, any berserker with this skill would be nearly invincible among players of the same tier. The 4 sword lights closed the distance to their target in an instant. However, Shifeng didn't activate a life-saving skill as Sandbone had expected. Rather, the swordsman unsheathed the second longsword that hung at his waist and brandished it. Swords Transmigration. The trajectories of Sandbone's 4 powerful sword lights abruptly altered, and 2 of them spun to attack their own wielder. Caught off guard, Sandbone defended himself with his merged weapon, but he had only deflected one of the sword lights, taking the full brunt of the other. Like a cannonball, he shot backward by more than 30 yards before crashing into the ground, losing over half of his HP in the process and entering a heavily injured state. In response, the battlefield fell silent. How is that possible? Diverging Phoenix, who fought Endless Scars, was flabbergasted. She was very familiar with Sandbone's strength, particularly when the Berserker used weapon merging. Unless she activated a Berserk skill, even she would have to focus on her defense for a time. However, Berserk skills were prohibited in the Thunder God's secret land, and she couldn't believe that someone had actually thrown her companion. Even Maple Locust, who battled Hidden Soul, was astonished when he saw this. Black Flame? When Happy Art saw the collapsed Sandbone, she could not help but turn to look at the swordsman beside her. She felt as if she were meeting this swordsman for the first time. He is actually so powerful. Had he hidden his strength earlier? Endless Scars wondered, watching Shifeng in confusion. She knew he had high combat standards, but she hadn't known they were this high. Even the various super guilds feared the Flower of Seven Sins senior cadre members, yet Shifeng had rendered one of these players powerless. No one would believe her if she retold this tale. During the brief moment of silence, Shifeng glanced at the Thunder Temple and shouted in the team chat, "Everyone, retreat to the Thunder Temple's side building. I'll cover you." His and his teammates' basic attributes were suppressed while they were in the magic array. They were dreaming if they thought they could kill the Flower of Seven Sins cadre members. Not even Shifeng had much hope of success. Although he had repelled Sandbone, he couldn't kill him. In fact, while he had told his team to run, the Flower's healers had already restored Sandbone's HP to full. Unfortunately, Shifeng could only afford to use Sword's transmigration a limited number of times, and it was only a matter of time before his enemy wore him down. As if Supreme Sky understood the Thunder God's secret key's value, he hadn't moved from the Thunder Temple's main entrance since the fight had begun. He was also flanked by more than 10 ranged players. Breaking past that blockade and escaping into the Thunder Temple itself wasn't possible. Hence, the Thunder Temple's side temple was their only hope. The side temple was a special level 90,100-man team dungeon and a land of death for current players. However, fleeing into the dungeon was better than staying and letting the Flower of Seven Sins slaughter them. When he heard Shifeng's command, Samsara glanced at the side temple and noticed the dark red dungeon entrance. The color signified the wide gap between the dungeon's level and the team's average level, but after some quick mental calculations, he realized that entering the dungeon was better than staying out here. "Everyone, listen to Black Flame. Maintain formation and move toward the side temple," Samsara said. "I'll open a path. Cover me," Endless Scars said, gritting her teeth as she glared at the ring of Flowers members around their team. She then used the dozen or so elemental blades rotating around her to form a defensive net that would block incoming ranged attacks. She followed up with chanting an incantation, pulling some of her attention away from Diverging Phoenix. In response, a powerful force suppressed the area around her, blurring it. The mana within the space began to rampage, somewhat affecting players that came in contact with it. When Diverging Phoenix recognized what Shifeng and his teammates were planning, she pointed a finger at Endless Scars and growled, "Don't think you can get past us so easily. Everyone, focus your attacks on her." Receiving the command, 8 of the Flowers of Seven Sins melee players charged at Endless Scars to interrupt her casting, but before they could come within 20 yards of her, arcs of lightning snaked out to counterattack. These lightning strikes were the result of Shifeng's lightning edge, and the 8 melee players were forced to scurry back. Suddenly, a massive gash, 3 meters deep, split the ground between the Flowers melee players and Endless Scars. "If you want to get to her, you'll have to go through me first," Shifeng said, smiling as he appeared beside Endless Scars. "Black Flame," Diverging Phoenix bellowed. She immediately activated her strongest legacy skill, Divine Frost Lance. Under Diverging Phoenix's control, hundreds of frost lances flew toward Shifeng and Endless Scars. She planned to blow both players to smithereens. Meanwhile, the 8 melee players continued to make their way toward their target. Although Shifeng had incredible strength and had defeated Sandbone, all of them were peak experts. He couldn't protect Endless Scars from their coordinated and focused attacks. However, before the 8 melee players could move within 15 yards of the woman in question, the surrounding temperature abruptly plummeted. As the cold embraced their bodies, their movement speed and basic attributes decreased slightly. Chilling Field. Due to the Thunder God's Secret Land's effects, Chilling Field had been reduced to a Tier 0 skill, but it was still a domain skill, suitable for group combat. Each containing 70% of Shifeng's strength, 6 icicles formed around the swordsman with more than enough power to deal with the Flower of Seven Sins members before him. Sword's Orbit. Dazzling stars glittered within a 15-yard radius around Shifeng. His defense was far more solid when he combined the technique with his 6 icicles than when he executed it with 2 swords. Not only had his use of the technique prevented the 8 melee players from approaching, but he had also stopped the hundreds of descending frost lances. Isn't this a little too powerful? Burning Sea, who watched from afar, was astonished. He was already struggling against 3 Flowers members and the occasional ranged attack. From time to time, he even took a hit, yet despite facing 8 melee players and Diverging Phoenix's vicious bombardment, Shifeng emerged unscathed. The man was simply a monster. The situation even surprised Shifeng. He had never expected the life potion to be so effective that it improved his sword's orbit. Without it, his defense wouldn't have been nearly as solid. With Shifeng to defend her, Endless Scars finally finished casting her spell. Under her control, powerful streams of air shot up from the ground, each with the strength of a great lord. The Flower of 7 Sins members were forced to evade, which allowed Samsara and the others to break away from their opponents. Quick! This spell won't last long. Endless Scars shouted. Samsara and his companions shook off the Flower's members and followed Shifeng into the side temple. Their enemies were left to watch as their prey escaped their grasp. Just before Shifeng and his team could enter the side temple, a frosty sensation assaulted them. Instinctively, Shifeng turned toward the sensation's source. Black flame, is it? Very good. I'll remember you, Supreme Sky coldly told the swordsman. Samsara and the other experts on the team shuddered when they heard Supreme Sky's declaration. For a moment, they felt as if the Grim Reaper had set his sights on their lives, which were no longer under their control. Is that so? I'll be waiting. Shifeng said, flashing Supreme Sky a grin. Shifeng had heard plenty about Supreme Sky during his previous life. The man had been famous for killing Super Guild's guild leaders many times, after all. However, since he had already ruined the man's plans, provoking him further didn't matter. Shifeng was no longer the player he had been in the past, and now, he, too, stood at the apex of God's domain. As the Flower of 7 Sins members watched, Shifeng led Samsara and the team into the Thunder Temple's side temple. Chapter 2200, Bloodline Creature. As Shifeng and the others disappeared into the side temple, silence reigned outside of the Thunder Temple. Damn it! They actually managed to escape. Diverging Phoenix cursed. They had gone to great lengths to set up this ambush. Not even a Super Guild's guild leader should be able to slip through their grasp. However, due to Shifeng, their preparation had gone down the drain. If news of this failure spread, the Flower's other members would likely ridicule them. Escape? They're not out of the water yet. Supreme Sky said, a chilling glint flashing in his eyes. He then commanded, call in a group of blood guards from the main headquarters, immediately. Phoenix, you and Sand will guard the side temple. This is the Thunder God's secret land. Even if Samsara's party dies, they're stuck here. They'll only be able to leave through those teleportation arrays. Let's make sure that side temple becomes their new home. Without someone to resurrect them, players that died inside a dungeon would automatically resurrect outside of the dungeon after some time, and in the Thunder God's secret land, players couldn't use any tools, including return scrolls. As long as they guarded the dungeon's entrance, Samsara's team wouldn't escape. Having entered the Thunder Temple's side temple, Supreme Sky knew that it was no place for current players. Not only was it a level 90 team dungeon, but it was also a special dungeon that didn't provide difficult options. In other words, this team dungeon only had one difficulty rank. Based on his experience, Supreme Sky deemed that it was the equivalent of a level 90,100 man, Hell Mode team dungeon. Entering this team dungeon before level 90 and without top-tier level 90 equipment was suicidal. Samsara's party only consisted of 10 players, so their chances of survival were abysmal. Understood. Diverging Phoenix and Sandbone nodded. Meanwhile, after passing through the side temple's entrance, Shifeng and the others felt as if they had arrived in another world. The hall, in which they stood, was full of 40-meter-tall divine statues. Although these statues were dilapidated after the ravages of time, they still emitted a faint trace of divine might. The hall contained 22 divine statues, each located beside a gigantic pathway. None of them knew where the pathways led, and the team began to wonder if they stood in an underground maze. Is this really a 100-man team dungeon? Burning Sea began to grow afraid as he looked around the colossal temple. He had felt the threat of death loom over him the moment he had arrived, and when he saw the 22 pathways, he felt as if he were looking down the maws of massive beasts. He knew players of their levels shouldn't be in this dungeon yet, and he couldn't help the powerless feeling he had once inside it. Just the idea of taking on the fully armed Naga guarding the pathways was enough of a reason to despair, not to mention exploring the pathways. Naga Guard, Thunder God's Kin, Bloodline Creature, Lord. Level 87. HP 45,000,000/45,000,000. Naga Guard Captain, Thunder God's Kin, Bloodline Creature, Great Lord, Level 88. HP 96,000,000/96,000,000. 20 of these monsters stood by each pathway's entrance. With their team's equipment and combat standards, dealing with one level 87 lord wouldn't be a problem, but taking on a group of them was a fool's dream. Furthermore, these lords were led by a level 88 Great Lord. But that wasn't the worst part. More importantly, all of these monsters were bloodline creatures and the Thunder God's kin. Ordinary experts might not understand these titles' implications, but peak experts like Burning Sea, who had a deep understanding of God's domain's mechanics and history, were very familiar with the power bloodline creatures wielded. A bloodline creature had inherited strength from a more powerful being, born with superior bloodlines, as the name suggested. Although their bloodlines weren't on the level of archaic species, they weren't far from it. Meanwhile, being the Thunder God's kin meant these Nagas had inherited certain special abilities from the Thunder God. With these two factors combined, these Nagas would command extraordinary strength. Outside of the Thunder God's secret land, their team would, more or less, be able to cope with these Nagas, but here, they were Tier 0 players. Even if they worked together, they might not be a match for a single Naga guard. These monsters are too strong for us right now. Our only option is to wait, Happy Art reasoned with a bitter smile. Although they had escaped the Flower of Seven Sins ambush, they weren't anywhere close to being in a safer position. The only thing worth celebrating was the fact that as long as they didn't move, these monsters wouldn't attack. Even Samsara and Endless Scars were at a loss for words when they saw the monsters. Moving forward would mean their deaths, and the Flower of Seven Sins definitely waited for them outside the dungeon, but doing nothing wasn't a solution either. No. We're not out of options. Shifeng said as he watched the Nagas guarding the pathways. We'll just have to take a huge risk. Any option is better than sitting here and doing nothing. Besides, it's not like we expected such a high-difficulty dungeon to not have risks. Samsara said. In that case, I have some things to settle first. I have fulfilled my end of our agreement. I want first pick of one item among the dungeon's loot, and I want command over the team throughout the raid, Shifeng told Samsara. In their previous deal, Shifeng had agreed to help Samsara's team until they reached the Thunder Temple. Since his mission was complete, he had no obligation to help Samsara or his people. That won't be a problem, Samsara said, nodding as he set Shifeng as the new team leader. No one else on the team voiced any objections to the arrangement. Most of them were under Samsara's employ, and since Shifeng had fulfilled his prior obligations, he had every right to negotiate new terms. Moreover, they had only avoided annihilation at the Flower of Seven Sins' hands thanks to Shifeng. Once Shifeng became the team leader, he assigned each member their tasks. He wasn't unfamiliar with the Thunder Temple's side temple in the least. The Thunder Temple itself had been quite famous throughout God's domain in the past. During his previous life, many superpowers' main forces had suffered tremendously in the Thunder Temple's side temple. Even after reaching level 90, those main forces had been helpless against the dungeon's Nagas. Not only were these Nagas stronger and faster than monsters of the same rank and level, but they also had extremely high lightning resistance as the Thunder God's kin. Moreover, they could command their own lightning abilities, imbuing their physical attacks with lightning-type magic damage and a certain chance of inflicting a paralysis debuff. Melee players had a particularly miserable time in this dungeon, especially MTs. Even if an MT successfully blocked the Naga's attacks, there was a chance that they'd be paralyzed for 1 or 2 seconds. To make matters worse, this dungeon's Nagas had high combat standards. 1 or 2 seconds was more than enough for them to land 2 or 3 more hits. Fortunately, the various superpowers had discovered these Nagas' weakness after repeated attempts to raid the dungeon. This weakness was the Nagas' slow turn rate. Although the Nagas had very high movement and reaction speeds, they couldn't immediately follow a player in a sudden turn that was greater than 100 degrees. The Nagas often overshot, missing their fleeing prey and forced to make a U-turn. Although Nagas could make the U-turn in 1 or 2 seconds, that was more than enough time for peak experts to distance themselves from the monsters. If peak experts used this moment appropriately and had an accurate grasp of timing and distance, they could easily kite the Nagas. They wouldn't have to face these monsters head-on. Of course, a single mistake would send any player to their grave. This tactic didn't change the fact that Nagas were far faster than players. Hence, Shifeng had Maple Locust and Formless Arrow replace their current equipment with items that focused on agility and movement speed. As those attributes were his focus already, Shifeng didn't need to readjust his equipment at all. Even with his tier suppressed, his movement speed was still far higher than ordinary Great Lords. Later, Shifeng took the lead, luring a lone Naga guard that wandered the hall, with Formless Arrow and Maple Locust moving alongside the Lord. The 3 of them then took turns aggroing the Naga, and when the monster moved within 20 yards of a player, someone else would attack and draw its aggro. With Shifeng's high damage and Formless Arrow's provoke skill, the team's other ranged players could attack the Naga guard with impunity. Since the hall was so spacious, Shifeng and his companions had plenty of room to kite around the monster. Their low DPS was the only problem they faced. Even with endless scars and the others attacking the Naga guard with everything they had, its HP fell at a snail's crawl. Yet, the team persisted. A moment ago, they had been stuck with no options. They were fortunate to have the opportunity to kill these Nagas. Time passed quickly as they fought. Finally, after fighting for more than 20 minutes, one of Endless Scar's spells took down the first level 87 Naga guard. Everyone's experience bars immediately grew by a small chunk, and as they did, the crisp sound of a system notification reached their ears. Chapter 2201, Flying Levels. System, you have killed a Naga for the first time. Activating the Thunder God's Trial. Kill 1000 Nagas. Current kill count -1. System, this trial is a reward quest for entering the dungeon for the first time. You will automatically fail the quest if you die or leave the dungeon. Quest rewards unknown. You will not suffer penalties for failing the quest. A kill counter, displaying the number of slain Nagas, then appeared in the corner of everyone's system interface. Kill 1000 Nagas? Isn't this a little too demanding? Happy Art frowned as he read the system notification. They had spent more than 20 minutes just to kill one Naga guard, the weakest monster in this dungeon. They would need an absurd amount of time to slay 1000 Nagas. Moreover, this was only a dungeon quest. They could complete multiple quests elsewhere with how much time it would take to complete the dungeon quest. Yes, it will be time-consuming, but these Nagas provide a lot of EXP. Our leveling speed here will be at least 50% faster than grinding outside of the dungeon, Burning Sea said in astonishment as he examined his experience bar. Their leveling speed in the Thunder God's secret land was already impressive, but leveling in this dungeon was 50% faster than grinding outside of it. This dungeon was an amazing leveling spot. Of course, a large part of the reason that they earned so much EXP was the fact that they were severely underleveled, and their team only had 10 players. If a level 90,100 man team grinded in this dungeon, their leveling speed would be subpar, at best. In any case, we're stuck here for the moment. Let's just grind and consider the quest an additional bonus, Samsara said. That's right. Our leveling speed in here is awesome. If the Flower of Seven Sins members knew that we were having such a great time leveling up, they'd likely die with anger, Frozen Gem said, laughing. They forced us into a coma, thinking that we'd cave in sooner or later, but we'll see who outlasts who. Frozen Gem could easily guess what was happening outside the dungeon right now. Supreme Sky had likely stationed a large amount of his manpower to guard the dungeon's entrance. Once their team left the dungeon, the Flower's members would pounce and make them suffer. Previously, she had been feeling anxious about their situation as they were not able to do anything inside the dungeon while people in the outside world were continuously improving themselves. Now that they could level up far faster than players elsewhere, she didn't mind completing an unexpected quest while the Flower of Seven Sins wasted their time. The Thunder God's Trial? When Shifeng saw the name of the quest, he seemed to recall such a quest from his past. However, no one had bothered to complete it back then. The reason for this was very simple. In an era when every second mattered, no one wanted to waste so much time on a dungeon quest. Even a level 90,100-man team would need 5 or 6 days of grinding to slay 1,000 Nagas, and rather than wasting that time, players could focus on leveling up and improving their equipment through other quests. Moreover, the true treasure lay in the Thunder Temple's main temple. The side temple was only a transition for players who wanted to explore the main temple. Who would possibly be willing to waste so much time in the side temple? However, since their team couldn't leave the dungeon right now, completing the dungeon quest was better than doing nothing. Unfortunately, most of the Naga guard's loot consisted of low-value items. The Lord hadn't even dropped a common weapon or equipment piece. The only items worth mentioning, aside from one magic crystal, were the amethyst coins, a currency unique to the Thunder God's secret land. With these amethyst coins, players could purchase some of the specialty products sold in the Thunder Temple. They could also trade these coins for gold for a 1-to-1 ratio. The underwhelming loot didn't surprise any of the team members. The Naga guard was the weakest monster in the dungeon, and although it was a powerful foe to them, that was simply due to their low levels and inferior equipment. Seeing a random mob in a dungeon drop top-tier equipment would be strange. Following which, the team continued to grind the hall's Nagas. Although the method they used to slay these monsters was tedious, every time one fell, they watched their experience bars grow and rejoiced. As they finished off their 6th Naga guard, the Lord dropped a blood-red stone fragment that immediately attracted Shifeng's attention. A Thunderbolt gemstone fragment. Although it was only a gemstone fragment, not a piece of top-tier equipment, it had been incredibly famous in God's domain during Shifeng's previous life. One could synthesize 10 Thunderbolt gemstone fragments into a Thunderbolt gemstone, an item the Thunder God had personally created to arm his soldiers. On its own, the Thunderbolt gemstone only increased players' basic attributes by 2% when equipped, and each player could equip a total of 3 Thunderbolt gemstones. Most experts would sneer at such a minimal boost. Even with 3 Thunderbolt gemstones, they'd only gain a 6% boost to their basic attributes, which certainly couldn't compare to the boosts other high-tiered gemstones offered. However, when players equipped 3 Thunderbolt gemstones, they triggered the hidden effect, Thunder God's Protection, which increased players' basic attributes by 9% and physique by 20%. In other words, players could equip 3 Thunderbolt gemstones and gain a 15% boost to their basic attributes and a 20% boost to their physique. The Thunderbolt gemstones had even been useful after players had reached Tier 3. Moreover, the Thunderbolt gemstones provided an additional 10% boost to players' basic attributes while inside the Thunder God's secret land. It was a perfect addition for those who wanted to explore the area. A fragment dropped after only the 6th kill? The situation surprised Shifeng a little. Could this be an additional reward for players entering the dungeon for the first time? As far as Shifeng could remember, the Thunderbolt gemstone fragments had a less than 1% chance of dropping, but this fragment had dropped after slaying their 6th Naga guard. The only explanation he could think of was that they had gotten extremely lucky, or the drop rate had increased. When Shifeng and his team had slain their 17th Naga guard, another Thunderbolt gemstone fragment had dropped. Sure enough, it has to be a benefit of entering the dungeon for the first time. Shifeng's excitement grew when he saw the second fragment. Initially, he had only planned to kill some monsters and grind levels in the dungeon. He had only planned to look for a way out of the Flower of Seven Sins trap after everyone had reached a high enough level. He hadn't actually considered raiding the dungeon completely, but if they could collect enough Thunderbolt gemstone fragments, his plans would have to change. Samsara and his teammates' basic attributes were still far from meeting the dungeon's minimum requirements, but if they could all equip 3 Thunderbolt gemstones, they could significantly shorten that gap. Considering their combat standards, raiding the Thunder Temple's side temple was entirely possible. After all was said and done, the Thunder Temple's side temple was a dungeon within an ancient god's secret land. The potential loot's quality could easily surpass that of a super large-scale team dungeon. Shifeng then informed the rest of the team about the Thunderbolt gemstones, which instantly motivated them to grind more Naga guards. Their goal in visiting the Thunder God's secret land was to improve themselves, and they had given up on that hope earlier. Now that another opportunity had presented itself, they couldn't miss this chance. As everyone's fighting spirits lifted, they fervently hunted the dungeon's Nagas. Once they recovered their stamina, they bounced back to continue the grind. Moreover, as everyone's levels continued to increase, their grinding speed also increased. These Nagas awarded a lot of EXP, and after grinding for almost 9 days, each member of the team had risen to level 80. Since their epic equipment had leveled with them, they had also received a major increase to their basic attributes, as well. As for Shifeng, he had reached level 84. Their leveling speed was astonishing. After collecting 28 Thunderbolt gemstone fragments, only 11 away from their goal, the sharp sound of a system notification reached their ears once more. System, congratulations. You have killed 1,000 Nagas and completed the Thunder God's trial. Chapter 2202, Rewards of the Thunder God's Trial. The team had only realized that they had completed the Thunder God's trial after they received the notification. They had been so focused on eliminating the Naga guards and guard captains, excited by the prospect of collecting Thunderbolt gemstone fragments, that they had pushed the trial to the back of their minds. After all, the Thunderbolt gemstones were wonderfully effective. Now, aside from Samsara and Happy Art, the 2 MTs, each team member had 3 Thunderbolt gemstones equipped, their basic attributes rising by a total of 25%. Moreover, they had regained the physique of a Tier 1 player. Since they had also reached level 80, slaying these Naga guards and guard captains had become much easier. In fact, Samsara and Happy Art could now tank a Naga guard captain all on their own. However, doing so placed a huge burden on the team's 2 healers, so they continued to use their earlier strategy to kite the Nagas. That way, the 2 healers didn't have to concentrate on casting healing spells and could launch their own attacks from time to time, increasing their grinding speed. We're finally done. When Shifeng saw the system notification, he could not help but feel that this quest had been a true challenge. If not for their special circumstances, they wouldn't have bothered to attempt it. It was just too time-consuming. System, you have completed the Thunder God's trial. Rewarding Thunder God's Pearl. Thunder God's Pearl, Dark Gold rank. This pearl contains the Thunder God's power. Can be used inside the Thunder God's secret land to activate the Thunderbolt barrier. The more Thunder God's pearls that are used to activate the Thunderbolt barrier, the stronger the barrier will become. Up to a maximum of 6 Thunder God's pearls can be used at the same time. Duration, 20 minutes. Cooldown, 1 hour. The Thunderbolt barrier? When Shifeng saw the Thunder God's pearl, an ecstatic expression lit up his face. He had never expected the Thunder God's trial to provide the very key to conquering the Thunder God's secret land. Players couldn't use powerful tools, such as magic arrays or summoning scrolls, in the Thunder God's secret land. On top of the fact that players' tiers were reduced to 0, exploring the secret land was a daunting task. This was especially true when players faced the bosses in the Thunder Temple's side temple. Normally, when Tier 0 players couldn't rely on external items, they'd reach their limit when fighting Great Lord-ranked monsters, but the weakest boss in the side temple was a Grand Lord. Moreover, they were not ordinary Grand Lords. All of the Grand Lord bosses in the side temple possessed special bloodlines, which made them far stronger than ordinary Grand Lords and a nightmare to raid. The various superpowers had only truly started to raid the Thunder God's secret land after they had acquired fragmented legendary items during Shi Feng's previous life. Had those superpowers had the Thunder God's pearls, their teams would have been at least 50% more efficient in the raids. Fragmented legendary items had still been extraordinarily rare at the time, and just obtaining one recarat massive investment of blood and sweat. Following which, Shi Feng activated the Thunder God's Pearl and created a thunderbolt barrier that enveloped a 200-yard radius. Pitch-black lightning arced around the barrier's edges. The moment the barrier manifested, all Naga guards and guard captains suffered a significant basic attribute reduction. The Naga guards' basic attributes dropped by 30%, and the Naga guard captains lost 25% of their attributes. In addition, the barrier reduced the Naga's reaction speed by 20%. Now, the team faced nearly half as much pressure when fighting the Naga patrol squads. Amazing. I can probably solo a Naga guard now. Burning Sea exclaimed as he watched the guard's sluggish movements. Experts like them preferred to deal with strong monsters, rather than fast monsters. Fast monsters had a higher chance of blocking their attacks, which would reduce their total DPS and prolong the fight. Depending on circumstances, winning the fight might even be impossible for the players. Sure enough, this really is the key to conquering the Thunder God's secret land. Shi Feng's eyes glowed with excitement when he saw the weakened Nagas. Moreover, this was only the effect of one Thunder God's Pearl. If he activated the Thunderbolt barrier with 6 pearls, it would even suppress a Grand Lord-ranked boss. Previously, he had only been 30% confident of his team slaying the dungeon's first boss, Naga General Valenka. After all, their team didn't have enough players. Even if every member of the team commanded extraordinary combat standards and had 3 Thunderbolt gemstones equipped, making up for the missing numbers would be very difficult. However, now that they had the Thunder God's Pearl, he felt that they had at least a 50% chance of defeating the first boss. With the Thunder God's Pearl now in hand, the team slew Nagas far faster than before. After less than half a day of grinding, they had collected the remaining 11 fragments, and both Samsara and Happy Art could equip 3 Thunderbolt gemstones. Amazing! With these attributes and physique, I'll have no problems tanking a Grand Lord. Samsara could not help his rueful sighs as he experienced the Thunderbolt gemstone's effects. He felt as if he had activated a mini berserk skill. It was no exaggeration to claim that these Thunderbolt gemstones were his greatest harvest from the Thunder God's secret land thus far. 3 Thunderbolt gemstones were easily worth more than 1 epic item. Epic items might have a wide level range, but they still had a level limit. Take the epic weapons and equipment he currently used, for example. He could use most of them until he reached level 100, but the Thunderbolt gemstones, on the other hand, would even be useful after that. In fact, these gemstones might even be useful after he reached Tier 4. Once Samsara and Happy Art had gained their sets of Thunderbolt gemstones, the team grew restless and suggested that they challenge the side temple's first boss. Naturally, Shi Feng didn't object. He, too, had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Although he had explored the Thunder God's secret land in the past, by the time he had first visited it, the various superpowers had raided the side temple several times. Furthermore, he had tagged along with other guilds' experts, and the expedition had been led by first-rate guilds' peak experts. Naturally, the leading first-rate guilds had claimed all the good loot. Experts from lesser guilds, like himself, who had come across a few entry passes to the Thunder God's secret land, had only been able to claim the scraps the first-rate guilds didn't want. Even so, he had obtained more than enough treasure to celebrate. An ancient god's secret land was far higher quality than other secret lands. Even after some other team had claimed the side temples first clear, and the quantity and quality of the drops had fallen, the dungeon's loot had still been considered top tier. Now that he had an opportunity to join the first team of players to raid the Thunder Temple's side temple in this life, why wouldn't he be eager to get started? Later, after Shi Feng and the team had rested for an hour or so, he led them straight toward the Guardian Hall, where the Naga general waited. The team had long since annihilated the Nagas outside the Guardian Hall. Now, only the Naga general and 2 of its bodyguards remained within. However, when the team entered the hall and saw the boss they intended to raid, they couldn't help but gasp. Naga General, Valenka, Bloodline creature, Archaic species, Grand Lord. Level 89. HP 320,000/320,000,000. Chapter 2203, Pioneer Rank Boss, an Archaic Species. Everyone's confidence plummeted when they saw Valenka and the purple-blue trident it wielded. Players' tiers were reduced to 0 while inside the Thunder God's secret land, and Grand Lords were nearly invincible against Tier 0 beings. The only reason they even dared to challenge the Naga General, which they had assumed would only be a Grand Lord-ranked boss, was because they had the Thunderbolt gemstones and Thunder God's Pearl. Including their epic weapons and equipment, they had thought that they had a high chance of defeating the side temple's first boss. Now, however, they learned that the first boss was a Grand Lord-ranked Archaic species. Even outside of the Thunder God's secret land, Grand Lord-ranked Archaic species were troublesome to deal with. Trying to raid one with the Thunder God's secret land was simply a joke. Could the Pioneer boss be different? Even Shi Feng frowned when he saw Valenka. The current Naga general was not the same boss he had encountered during his previous life. In the past, Valenka had only been an ordinary Grand Lord. Moreover, it had wielded a 2-handed axe, not a trident. Monsters' combat standards in God's domain largely differ depending on what weapon they used. For example, monsters that used a 2-handed axe would rely on simple combat methods and great destructive power. Every one of Valenka's attacks with a 2-handed axe had been akin to AoE spells. Even for MTs of the same level, receiving one of this monster's attacks head-on was suicidal. Yet, in this life, Valenka held a trident. Unlike the clumsy but powerful 2-handed axe, a trident was a type of spear. Not only did it have a much longer attack range than a 2-handed axe, but it was more flexible in its attack patterns as well. With a trident, Valenka would not have to worry about numerous attacks at the same time. Moreover, as an Archaic species, Valenka's basic attributes was much higher than ordinary Grand Lords. Hence, this boss could likely command as much raw power with its trident as it had in Shi Feng's past. This Valenka was both powerful and agile. This raid would definitely be twice as difficult as Shi Feng had expected. More importantly, bosses had a natural advantage. The normal Valenka, the one Shi Feng remembered, had only had 180 million HP, but this Naga general had 320 million HP. With its battle recovery, it could recover 3,200,000 HP every 5 seconds. If the team couldn't deal more than 640,000 DPS, raiding this boss would be impossible. This boss is too powerful. Even if it just stands there and lets us hit it, I doubt we could put a dent in its HP, Happy Art said as she watched Valenka with a bitter smile. Even if our DPS can surpass his battle recovery, it can kill us several times over by the time we've whittled it down to 0. Their team was already severely undermanned for this dungeon. Slaying an ordinary Grand Lord would be an extreme challenge, and now that they discovered that their opponent was a Grand Lord-ranked Archaic species, they had no hope of success. Are you sure we can defeat this thing? Endless Scars quietly asked Shi Feng. Every member of the team was either a peak expert or an apex expert in God's domain. They had all slain many bosses, and could easily gauge their team's limits. In Endless Scar's opinion, their team wasn't capable of defeating Valenka. She couldn't figure out how they could raid this boss. Shi Feng's prowess might be astonishing, but raiding a dungeon boss wasn't a one-man job. I think we have roughly a 20% to 30% chance of defeating the Naga general depending on how effective 6 Thunder God's pearls are, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. He hadn't expected this boss to be different from the one in the past, but their team had also collected crucial items needed to raid the dungeon. Fortunately, the Naga general was the easiest of the side temple's bosses to raid since it had very simple skills. Players just needed high enough basic attributes and the ability to dodge incoming attacks. 20 to 30%? Endless Scars gave the swordsman an astonished look. As far as she was concerned, a 5% chance of raiding this boss would be heaven-defying, yet Shifeng was almost confident of a 30% chance of success. He had to be joking. The rest of the team members stared at Shifeng in shock as well. Let's give it a try. Gem, stay close to the entrance. If the raid seems impossible, run. The boss shouldn't chase you beyond the hall, Shifeng said. Alright, Frozen Gem nodded as she walked toward the hall's entrance. Even if Shifeng and the others died, she would be able to resurrect them. The death penalty inside the dungeon was quite light, and her resurrection spell could reduce it further. Shifeng then instructed Happy Art to tank the boss while Samsara tanked the 2 level 88 Great Lord ranked Naga bodyguards. Meanwhile, Shifeng would stay close to Happy Art. Shifeng's arrangement confused his teammates. Samsara was clearly stronger than Happy Art, yet Shifeng instructed him to manage the side mobs. However, none of them objected to their team leader's plan. Let's get started. Shifeng commanded once everyone was in position. 6 team members immediately activated the Thunder God's pearls they had received from completing the Thunder God's trial. The 6-pearl Thunderbolt barrier covered a 400-yard radius, enveloping the entire hall. Valenka and its bodyguards' basic attributes immediately plummeted. In the blink of an eye, the Naga general had lost 30% of its basic attributes while the 2 Naga bodyguards had lost 45%. Amazing! Shifeng could not help but exclaim when he saw how effective the barrier was. He had thought they'd be lucky if the barrier could reduce the Naga general's basic attributes by 20%, but Valenka had lost 10% more than that. This Thunderbolt barrier could rival the strength of an advanced magic array. Shifeng then had Frozen Gem rejoin the team's formation, and Happy Art and Samsara bolted forward to tank the boss and its minions. Valenka paid no heed as its 2 bodyguards were lured away. Rather, it raised its trident and thrust it at the female shield warrior. The trident could reach up to 25 yards away and contained enough power that space around it trembled. In the blink of an eye, Valenka had sent 4 stabs at Happy Art. Despite being a peak expert, Happy Art had a hard time dodging the 4 consecutive attacks. The 4th attack lightly grazed Happy Art's shield, and the resulting impact caused her to stumble a step back and lose more than 40,000 HP. Valenka's power with the trident was horrific. Moreover, this was the result after the boss had been suppressed by the Thunderbolt barrier. If Valenka were at its peak, the consequences for daring to challenge it would have been dire. Fortunately, Happy Art was no weakling. With the boost provided from the 3 Thunderbolt gemstones, she had more than 170,000 HP at her maximum even after her tier had been reduced to 0. Losing 40,000 HP was just barely tolerable. However, Valenka wasn't done as it thrust its tail into the ground to resurface behind the shield warrior. Although Happy Art had sensed the attack, she couldn't turn around in time to defend herself due to the prior impact. Just before the tail slammed into Happy Art, Shifeng grabbed her arm and dragged her out of harm's way. Wielding Killing Ray in his other hand, he sliced at the Naga general's tail, sending it smashing into the boss with more speed than before. -2,213,796. An eye-catching amount of damage appeared above Valenka's head, stunning the team members. Thus far, these players had only dealt around -20,000 damage with each attack, so it was hard not to notice a damage of over -2 million. Even that is possible? Burning Seed gaped in shock when he saw Shifeng turn the boss's attack against itself. He had never thought that it was even possible for a boss to damage itself. Boss monsters generally had above-average combat standards, and trying to force a boss to damage itself was like getting a player to turn their own attacks against themselves. It should be utterly impossible. Yet, Shifeng had done just that. Over 2 million damage? We should be able to defeat him within 20 minutes. When Shifeng saw how much damage Valenka had dealt to itself and took into account the team's overall DPS, he breathed a sigh of relief. Throughout the side temple, Valenka was the only boss capable of harming itself. This was due to its tail puncture skill. This skill had sent countless MTs to their graves in the past, but it had also given players a more efficient way to defeat the Naga general. Of course, players needed very high strength and an almost perfect grasp of timing to use this method. Their efforts would fail with the slightest mistake, and MTs couldn't dodge Valenka's tail puncture too early. If they did, the Naga general would retract its tail. This was why Shifeng had assigned Happy Art to Valenka. Samsara would have no issues dodging tail puncture if he tanked the boss, which would disrupt Shifeng's timing. Happy Art's combat standards were perfect for the job. She could defend herself against Valenka's frontal attacks but wouldn't be able to evade tail puncture. After seeing what Shifeng had done, the team's confidence rose substantially. Valenka would use tail puncture almost every 2 seconds, which meant they could cause over -2 million damage every 2 seconds. It was certainly enough to overcome the Naga general's battle recovery. Now that they had eliminated the greatest challenge in this raid, defeating this boss would be much simpler. Following which, Valenka's HP rapidly decreased. However, every time Valenka's HP fell by 20%, it would summon 2 new bodyguards. Fortunately, with the Thunderbolt barrier suppression and Samsara's combat standards, keeping a couple of level 88 Great Lords busy was not a problem. Eventually, when Valenka's HP fell to 20%, the Naga general went berserk, and its speed and strength skyrocketed. Seeing this, Happy Art immediately activated Shield Wall, while Shifeng activated Chilling Field, reserving 1 icicle to shove Happy Art out of harm's way when necessary. He also reserved 2 icicles for redirecting Valenka's tail. He used the remaining 3 to bombard the Naga general. However, Valenka's attacks were simply too fast. Even though Happy Art did her best to defend herself, her tier wasn't high enough for this fight, and she couldn't keep up. In the end, Happy Art had died after enduring the Berserk Naga general's attacks for around 40 seconds. At this point, Valenka still had 8% of its HP remaining. When their shield warrior fell, Maple Locust and Burning Sea moved to the forefront and took her place. However, they had both died after less than 10 seconds. Heartless Sword then stepped in and activated his life-saving skill to tank the boss. Unfortunately, he had only lasted 7 seconds, only withstanding 2 of the Naga general's attacks. Quick! Attack! The players' eyes were bloodshot as they watched Valenka's HP drop to 4%. With their expendable members dead, Samsara activated his life-saving skill and took over as the tank, but against both the Naga general and its 2 bodyguards, he didn't last more than 6 seconds. Valenka had 1% of its HP remaining. Die! With no other melee players remaining, Shifeng activated Instant Strike and appeared before the boss. Sword's Transmigration. Although Instant Strike had also been reduced to Tier 0, the skill still increased his attack speed by 300% and damage by 240% for 3 seconds. As he struck, damages of over -120,000 flashed above Valenka's head, one after another. As a finishing touch, Shifeng redirected Valenka's tail puncture and caused the Naga general to take over 2 million damage, obliterating the last of its HP. Chapter 2204, Naga General's Loot. As Valenka cried out in agony and collapsed to the ground, the Naga bodyguards split up and scattered. A short moment later, only 5 players and a small pile of loot remained in the hall. We did it. Frozen Gem could not help but cheer. Even Endless Scars and Shifeng breathed a sigh of relief. The Naga general had been a little too powerful for them when it had gone berserk. Had the battle continued for another 5 seconds, they would have been annihilated. Meanwhile, Valenka's death granted the survivors an astronomical amount of EXP. Even Shifeng, who had already reached level 84, watched as his experience bar filled. 79%. 85%. 90%. The Naga general's death awarded them even more EXP than any of the guard captains they had slain earlier. After 5 seconds, a golden glow surrounded Shifeng, and he rose to level 85. Endless Scars and the others also rose from level 80 to 81. The frightening amount of EXP awarded stunned everyone for a moment. After level 80, players had to grind for 4 or 5 days elsewhere to reach the next level, but after killing one Naga general, they had gained enough EXP to do just that. This boss gave us so much EXP. If we can kill a few more of these bosses, we'll be able to take those people from the Flower of Seven Sins by storm when we get out of here, Formless Arrow excitedly stated. Right now, they stood at the very peak of God's domain with their levels. Although they had not left the side temple, they had received reports regarding the outside world. Even the highest leveled expert among the various superpowers was only level 79, and most peak experts were only level 77. On the other hand, their team had reached level 81. Everyone would be shocked, and this came to light. In God's domain, players' levels were extremely important, after all, especially for peak experts. Once they reached a certain level, they could explore new maps and secure better items and benefits. Furthermore, they would have less competition when exploring these higher-level maps. Moreover, level suppression had always been a factor in this game. Although level suppression wasn't incredibly effective, it would be significant with a gap of 5 or more levels. That's right. They've likely never expected us to level up so quickly, Frozen Gem said, smiling. If we can survive in here for a while longer and increase the level gap to 5, we'll have a chance of turning the tables. Furthermore, the various superpowers have begun to show up in the Thunder God's secret land. Endless Scars also nodded in response to Formless Arrow and Flower Gem's sentiments. Ordinary powers might have a difficult time entering the Thunder God's secret land right now, but the various superpowers had already discovered it. This was also why their team had been in such a hurry to enter the Thunder Temple. Now that so many days had passed since they had entered the dungeon, the various superpowers had already sent in expedition teams. Once the various superpowers entered the Thunder God's secret land, the Flowers of Seven Sins would find the place harder to hold within its iron fist. In turn, this would increase their team's chances of escaping. Alright, we need to resurrect everyone quickly. We'll be in trouble if they resurrect automatically, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Valenka was the easiest boss in the Thunder Temple's side temple, and the only one they had the strength to kill right now. Even with the 6 Thunder God's pearls, they'd need a 100-man team to raid the rest of the dungeon's bosses. Oh. Frozen Gem only remembered that she needed to resurrect her fallen comrades after Shifeng's statement. She then got to work. Samsara and the others returned to life a moment later. They couldn't help their elated grins when they saw Valenka's corpse. They hadn't actually expected the raid to succeed, and they couldn't help but look upon Shifeng with admiration. They had just taken down a level 90 Team Dungeon's boss. Moreover, this was a team dungeon inside the Thunder God's secret land. Normally, raiding such bosses without a level 90,100-man team should be impossible, but they had accomplished the feat with a team often level 80 players. Shifeng's leadership and combat power were among the best they had ever seen. After their moment of excitement, the team members turned their gazes to the loot beside Valenka's corpse. Although Valenka was only a Grand Lord ranked Archaic species, it had dropped an astonishingly high number of items. There were easily more than 20 items in the pile, and every one radiated a dazzling glow. It was easy to tell that these were all top-tier items. As the team watched, Shifeng began to appraise the loot. Valenka was the side temple's first boss. Shifeng had expected it to drop average loot at best, but he couldn't help but gasp as he appraised the items. The Naga general had dropped a total of 23 items. There were 3 pieces of dark gold equipment that could be used from level 80 to 100, a plate armor helmet, a pair of cloth bracers, and a leather belt. all three pieces of equipment could definitely be considered top tier at this stage of the game. Even Samsara, who had seen his fair share of top tier equipment, audibly gulped. Normally, equipment that dropped in dungeons had a fixed level, but all three pieces of dark gold equipment Valenka had dropped could level with their users. Valenka had also dropped 6 pieces of level 80 to 90 fine gold equipment. 4 of the 6 pieces were parts of the Thunderbolt set, a set equipment players could only obtain from the Thunder God's secret land. Although the Thunderbolt set was only a 4-piece, fine gold set equipment, it had been incredibly famous among those who grinded in the Thunder God's secret land in the past. Once a player collected all 4 pieces, the set would provide basic attribute buffs that could rival dark gold equipment. The 2-piece set effect also increased spell effectiveness by 30%, while the 4-piece set effect increased players' basic attributes by 10% and weakened the Thunder God's secret land suppression. If players equipped the complete Thunderbolt set, their tier would only fall to tier 1. The Thunderbolt set's effects might be a joke in the outside world, but within the Thunder God's secret land, they worked wonders. When players had first discovered the Thunderbolt set in the past, it had instantly become a treasure that countless magical class players had sought. And now, Valenka had dropped the entire set. It was a miracle. When the rest of the team saw the Thunderbolt set's effects, their eyes glowed. They knew how bitter it felt being reduced to a tier 0 player in the Thunder God's secret land, so they recognized how astounding it would be if they could fight as tier 1 players in this secret land. It was no exaggeration to claim that the Thunderbolt set was even more valuable than an 8-piece dark gold set equipment in the Thunder God's secret land. While everyone cooed over the Thunderbolt set, Shifeng shared the next item's attributes in the team chat. When the team saw this item, they all gasped, including Samsara and Endless Scars. The Thunder Eagle's Summoning Flute. Chapter 2205, Flying Mount. The Thunder Eagle's Summoning Flute looked just like any ordinary flute, made of wood, with dark purple runes carved into it. How is this possible? Am I seeing things? I thought flying mounts only dropped from level 100 plus maps. When Burning Sea and the others saw the summoning flute, they audibly gulped. They couldn't believe their eyes. As domain realm experts, they had seen countless top-tier treasures. Each of them even carried several epic weapons and equipment pieces, but they couldn't help their surprise and excitement when they saw a flying mount. Although almost all level 50-plus players had their own mounts by now, not a single player in God's domain had their own flying mount. Nobody even knew where to find one. Players, especially expert players, now knew the benefits of owning a mount. Due to players' limited stamina, they could only afford to operate within a limited area. With how large God's domain was, trying to explore the game's maps by relying on stamina would be impossible. Naturally, mounts allowed players to increase their range of activity. Furthermore, after level 50, not many maps had teleportation points, and players would find even fewer as they explored higher-level maps. As a result, players would have to explore and find these maps on their own power, which made mounts even more important. Countless experts currently contested over mysterious iron mounts, while secret silver mounts were easily as valuable as epic items. Even if experts of Burning Sea's caliber had multiple pieces of epic equipment on them, they typically only had secret, silver or fine gold ranked mounts. Even so, these mounts were a large part of the reason that their leveling speed was so much faster than ordinary experts. However, a flying mount was in a different league than land mounts. A flying mount could ignore the terrain and travel to a destination in a straight line. A flying mount would be several times faster than land mounts. God's Domain was a virtual reality game that fully immersed its players' consciousness into the game, unlike past virtual reality games, which only allowed partial immersion. Because of this, God's Domain felt frighteningly real. In addition, it had NPCs with incredible intelligence, which players could befriend. If not for the ever-present system interface and in-game aspects, such as levels and basic attributes, players would have likely treated God's Domain as a second real world. And countless people dreamed of flying through the sky. Based on the information they had collected thus far, flying mounts were intensely difficult to obtain in God's domain. Unlike land mounts, players couldn't use their coins to purchase flying mounts from NPCs. Even Shifeng was shocked to see the Thunder Eagle's summoning flute, not to mention Burning Sea and his companions. He remembered the Thunder Eagle flying mount from his past and knew that it could drop in the Thunder God's secret land. However, he only recalled that the Thunder Eagle dropped in the secret land's deeper regions. To be precise, I should underscore VE only dropped within the level 100 dungeon, Thunder God's Mountain, and with an obcarrot rate, at that. Even after 10 years in God's domain, less than 10 players had owned one. And yet, their team had obtained a Thunder Eagle after slaying the Naga general. It was unbelievable. This was why he had gasped while appraising Valenka's loot. He had never expected the dungeon's first boss to drop such amazing items. Even a common flying mount was as valuable as 3 pieces of level 100 plus epic equipment. Moreover, that had been the common exchange rate after flying mounts had become more common. When flying mounts had first appeared in the past, a common flying mount could have easily gone for 5 pieces of level 100 plus epic equipment. However, the Thunder Eagle wasn't just a common flying mount, it was an extraordinary flying mount. Flying mounts didn't follow the same ranks as land mounts. They were split into common, extraordinary, and legendary ranks. There had been rumors in Shifeng's previous life of a mythic ranked flying mount, as well, but no one had ever seen it. Meanwhile, these ranks represented the growth potential of flying mounts. Flying mounts were similar to guild mounts in that players could continue to nurture their growth. It was even possible to nurture a flying mount into a tier 6 god. However, nurturing flying mounts was far more difficult than nurturing a guild mount. Thunder Eagle's Summoning Flute. Summon an extraordinary ranked Thunder Eagle as a companion to fly and fight in the air. If the Thunder Eagle dies, it will need 15 natural days to resurrect. The Thunder Eagle has been blessed by the Thunder God and as such, can be used inside the Thunder God's secret land. According to our previous agreement, I have priority to choose one of the dropped items in this dungeon. I choose the Thunder Eagle's Summoning Flute, Shifeng declared. The Naga general had dropped plenty of top-tier items, including epic equipment. However, these items were all worthless compared to an extraordinary flying mount. Although the Thunder Eagle was the second lowest rank of the 4, 90% of the flying mounts players had used in Shifeng's previous life had been common rank. Most common flying mounts reached their limit after growing to tier 3 peak rank, and getting them that far would cost an astronomical amount of resources. They only had a 3% chance at breaking through to tier 4. Extraordinary flying mounts, however, could easily reach tier 3 peak rank and had a 30% chance of climbing to tier 4. In addition, the 2 ranks started at different tiers. Common flying mounts started as tier 2, while extraordinary flying mounts started as tier 3. Moreover, the Thunder Eagle wasn't your average extraordinary flying mount. Aside from the 4 major ranks, flying mounts fell into 3 minor ranks: basic, intermediate, and advanced. However, one had to summon their mount before they would learn which minor rank it belonged to. The Thunder Eagle, Shifeng remembered, was an intermediate extraordinary flying mount. Although Shifeng had been the guild leader of a second-rate guild, he had only gotten his hands on an advanced common flying mount. He had invested an astronomical amount of resources to nurture his mount to tier 3 peak rank, and it had just barely been able to contend with ordinary tier 4 experts. If he had acquired an intermediate extraordinary flying mount, even ordinary tier 4 experts would have had to move out of his way. None of Shifeng's teammates expressed any arguments to Shifeng's declaration. They merely looked on in envy. Even Endless Scars was a little reluctant to give up the Thunder Eagle, but they had given their word. Furthermore, they wouldn't have had a prayer of slaying Valenka without him. After Shifeng took the Thunder Eagle's summoning flute, Samsara and the others split the rest of the loot. By the time the items had been distributed, Endless Scars had obtained the full Thunderbolt set, while Samsara had claimed the epic ranked belt. The rest of the team members had claimed the remaining dark gold and fine gold equipment. After they took a moment to replace their old items, everyone watched their basic attributes rise slightly. The team continued to grind Naga guards and guard captains for another 2 days, allowing Samsara and the others that had died during the boss fight to rise to level 81. Meanwhile, Samsara and Endless Scars had received news that multiple superpowers had shown up to the Thunder Temple. They had encountered the Flower of Seven Sins, and there seemed to be some friction. "It's about time we got out of here," Shifeng said, smiling when he heard the news. Chapter 2206, Commotion outside the temple. Hundreds of players had gathered before the Thunder Temple's main entrance. If ordinary players saw this gathering, they'd be alarmed. The lowest level player here was level 77 and could easily rank among the top 3 on any kingdom's ranking list and within the top 20 in an empire. And yet, hundreds of such players had come to the same place, standing in multiple teams. One particular team of 100 players, however, prevented anyone from entering the Thunder Temple. If God's Domain's expert players saw this, their jaws would drop. Every one of these teams consisted of well-known experts from the various superpowers, and a significant number were peak experts. However, none of them could get past the team guarding the Thunder Temple's main entrance. Diverging Phoenix. "We have played along with your whims for long enough. You and your people have hogged the main temple to yourselves. Now that 5 superpowers teams have arrived, don't you think you're going a little too far?" Melody, one of the Sacred Temple's vice-temple masters, coldly challenged Diverging Phoenix. "The Flower of Seven Sins is conducting an important mission right now. Once our mission is complete, we'll move out of the way. But you're more than welcome to try forcing your way through us," Diverging Phoenix impassively replied, glancing at Melody. As Diverging Phoenix spoke, the 20 players around her stepped forward. Every one of them wore a blood-red emblem, and a thick layer of black fog surrounded their bodies. Every player in the area felt a sense of dread as these players' frightening aura touched them. The moment these 20 players stepped forward, the waiting experts' expressions darkened. "The Blood Guards?" Melody frowned at the experts on the elevated platform, noting their blood-red emblems. The Thunder Temple had more than just a dungeon inside, it was also a place that offered quests and items for exchange. At first, the Sacred Temple had only sent a little over 20 players to the Thunder Temple, and as a result, they hadn't been able to do anything about the Flower of Seven Sins blockade, but now that 4 more superpowers had arrived, they had just as many players as the Flowers team. However, the Blood Guards altered the situation. The Flower of Seven Sins Blood Guards were even famous among the various superpowers. The Blood Guards had risen to fame after their participation in a war on the Western continent. A newly promoted superpower had fought with the Super Guild, Rashomon, over a key town. Knowing that it was no match for Rashomon, the new superpower had paid a high price to hire the Flower of Seven Sins' help in the battle. Rashomon was no weaker than Battle Wolves, considered an above-average super guild. However, once the Flower of Seven Sins Blood Guards had joined the battle, Rashomon had lost its commanding Vice Guild leader and peak experts. The Vice Guild leader had been protected by 5,000 of Rashomon's experts, including 4 domain realm experts and over a dozen peak experts, but with a 100-man team, the Blood Guards had slain the Vice Guild leader. After that, the Blood Guards' fame had spread through the various superpowers, and everyone had learned to fear the Flower of Seven Sins even more than before. Although only 20 Blood Guards stood before them, Melody wasn't confident that the 5 superpowers' 100-plus experts were enough to take them on. "Vice Temple Master, these Blood Guards are quite powerful, but I believe that we still have a chance of victory. As we wait, more superpowers will start to enter the Thunder God's secret land. If that happens, we'll lose our advantage," Ruthless Sky, the Gale Swordmaster, said. The Blood Guard was quite famous, but more than a month had passed since their battle with Rashomon. At this point, the various superpowers had obtained more epic items, combat techniques, and legacies, growing far stronger than they had been. Furthermore, these superpowers, excluding the Sacred Temple, had each sent a domain realm expert to accompany their teams. Even if their 5 teams were no match for the Blood Guards, they should be able to distract these players while Melody and the other superpowers upper echelons made it into the main temple to investigate the situation. Alright, tell everyone to get ready to move. Melody commanded. She understood that the longer they let this continue, the less of an advantage the sacred temple would have. Leave it to me. Ruthless Sky said, laughing. The secret pavilion had titled him one of the 8 Swordmeisters, and since then, he had improved himself considerably. He had even mastered a bronze combat technique and was confident of contending with the sword freak, Miracle Dragon, who had recently reached the domain realm. He should have no problems against these 20 blood guards, who mainly consisted of flowing water realm experts. With the sacred temple leading the charge, the 4 other superpowers teams followed Ruthless Sky. You're overestimating yourselves. Diverging Phoenix snarled disdainfully as she watched the 100+ experts charge toward her. Calmly, she commanded, Blood Guards, get rid of them. As Diverging Phoenix issued the order, a flash of madness appeared in the Blood Guards' eyes as the dark fog around them began to expand. Their bodies began to grow slightly, and pitch-black scales and spikes burst through their skin. A crimson gem manifested in the center of their foreheads, as well. None of these players looked human at this point, and their frightening auras made them feel like demonic creatures that had crawled up from the dark abyss. What's going on? These Blood Guards' transformation confused the various superpowers experts. Players couldn't use berserk skills in the Thunder God's secret land, but based on the intensity of the Blood Guards' auras, they had done something to increase their basic attributes. Before the various superpowers experts could react, the 20 Blood Guards left afterimages in their wake as they appeared before Ruthless Sky and the others. A level 77 Blood Guard Berserker swung his greatsword straight at Ruthless Sky, simple and swift. The attack didn't contain the slightest hint of excess movement, as if the player were a natural killing machine. Don't even think you can stop me that easily. In response, Ruthless Sky executed Twisting Space, the bronze combat technique he had recently learned. Ruthless Sky sent 3 sword lights at the Blood Guard, which merged to form a devastating attack just before they hit the opposing greatsword. Boom! The sound of colliding metal echoed throughout the secret land. The Blood Guard stumbled back 2 steps, staring at Ruthless Sky in astonishment. The latter also slid a half-step backward. Impossible. Ruthless Sky was stunned as he stared back at the Blood Guard. The bronze combat technique, Twisting Space, allowed him to combine 3 attacks into one. Although he hadn't been able to combine the power of all 3 attacks perfectly during his past experiments, he could still exhibit 240% of his strength in the one attack. However, even after more than doubling his strength, the Blood Guard's strength was only slightly less than his own. Had he not used Twisting Space, he would have been at a disadvantage in that clash. Executing a bronze combat technique cost a lot of stamina and concentration, and Ruthless Sky could only afford to use Twisting Space 6 or 7 times before collapsing. The other superpowers experts were just as shocked by the Blood Guard's strength. Thus far, the Blood Guards had killed a few of the superpowers flowing water realm experts before the healers had a chance to cast their healing spells. Did you really think a numerical advantage was enough to deal with the Blood Guards? How foolish. Diverging Phoenix ridiculed as she watched Ruthless Sky and his companions. Even domain realm experts would have to expend a lot of effort to defeat the Blood Guards in a one-on-one fight outside of the Thunder God's secret land. Within this secret land, even Diverging Phoenix found the idea of facing a Blood Guard daunting. How could these peak experts possibly be a match for the Flower's Blood Guards? We cannot let them escape back into the dungeon. Immediately, a group of assassins revealed themselves from their hiding spot near the side temple and activated the blood magic seal. A crimson magic array then appeared above the secret land, enveloping Samsara's group, as well as the various superpowers experts. However, unlike the blood magic seal the Flower of 7 Sins had used previously, this one completely separated Shifeng's team from the side temple. The small team couldn't escape back into the dungeon unless they destroyed the magic barrier. I'll make sure to take my time with you this time. Once the magic array had locked down the area, he returned his gaze to Samsara and his companions, but just before he could comment further, he noticed his praise levels. He couldn't help but gasp in shock. Level 81? You all. How can you be? Chapter 2207, Repelled in one move, level 81? How are their levels so high? When the rest of the players in the secret land noticed Samsara and his teammates' levels, they stared with wide, disbelieving eyes, but when they used their identification skills, the system confirmed that every member of Samsara's team had reached level 81. Who are these people? Melody, who commanded the sacred temple's members, could not help but glance at Samsara's group in surprise. She very quickly noticed a familiar figure among the group. Black Flame. Unlike the last time she had run into Shifeng, he now wore a suit of red-black armor and carried two exquisite longswords, one blue and one white, at his waist. His aura felt as vast as the great ocean, boundless and unfathomable. In comparison, Shifeng's aura in the past had felt like a sheathed blade. He felt like a completely different person. In the past, Melody had, more or less, seen the depths of this swordsman's strength, but now, she couldn't see anything. Moreover, the fact that Shifeng was level 81 left Melody speechless. Every level after level 70 required an astonishing amount of EXP to reach. Despite grinding continuously and completing one high-ranked quest after another, she had only reached level 78 thus far. Even so, she was one of the highest-leveled players in the Sacred Temple. She'd be amazed to find a player even one level higher than her, yet Shifeng was 3 levels higher. She had no idea how he had gotten so far. Moreover, level 80 was a minor threshold. Depending on one's equipment, a level 80 player could have far higher basic attributes than a level 79 player. She wouldn't have been so surprised if Shifeng had been the only player to reach such a high level. After all, he was responsible for plenty of miracles in God's domain already. It was certainly possible that he would attain a higher level than she, but the problem was that he wasn't the only player to reach level 81. The 9 players alongside him were the same level. Just what had they done? Most importantly, Melody didn't recognize any of the 9 players. Although levels couldn't reflect a player's true strength in God's domain, they offered a rough estimate of a player's standards. The fact that Samsara and the others had reached level 81 meant that they should, at the very least, be peak experts. Just how many secrets does Zero Wing have? As she watched the small group of players, Melody could tell that their relationship with Shifeng was a relatively close one. Moreover, they vaguely seemed to treat Shifeng like their leader. These were peak experts they were talking about. Peak experts were treated like upper echelons even in a super guild like the Sacred Temple. In a budding superpower, such experts would be absolute mainstays. Budding superpowers would pay astronomical sums just to recruit a peak expert. Unfortunately, doing so was extremely difficult. Experts of such caliber were incredibly rare, with every one of them looming like a dragon among men. They also didn't lack money, which was why it was so difficult to recruit them with offers of wealth. On top of that, peak experts tended to have different goals in mind. Since she had discovered that Shifeng was close with 9 unknown peak experts, the Secret Temple would have to re-evaluate its opinion of Zero Wing. Although Zero Wing had held on to Stone Forest City and gained access to an abundance of resources, the guild still didn't have a background. The number of experts in the guild was pitifully low compared to superpowers, and experts were essential for any developing guild. To make matters worse, Zero Wing had made plenty of powerful enemies. Its feud with Starlink, in particular, had reached a point of no return. Starlink might not be able to touch Zero Wing right now, but that wouldn't last. The advantages Stone Forest City provided were only temporary. Once players reached higher levels, Stone Forest City wouldn't be as useful in the bottomless abyss. Moreover, unlike Zero Wing, Starlink's background was sturdy. The guild was not as simple as it seemed. Taking care of Zero Wing wouldn't be a challenge to Starlink. Hence, none of the various superpowers were optimistic about Zero Wing's future and refused to partner with the guild. By allying themselves with Zero Wing, they'd gain Starlink as an enemy, which wasn't a worthwhile trade. However, if Zero Wing gained an additional 10 or so peak experts, its circumstances would change. At the very least, Zero Wing would be just as capable of raiding team dungeons as the various superpowers. Including the massive benefits from Stone Forest City, Zero Wing would be a lot closer to becoming a true superpower. However, Sandbone and Diverging Phoenix were even more shocked than Melody. How did they level up so quickly? Diverging Phoenix stared at Samsara and his teammates, confused. She had clearly seen their levels before they had fled into the side temple. She had also experienced the Thunder Temple's side temple personally. Current players shouldn't have a shred of hope of surviving in there, and Samsara's team only had 10 players. They should have been lucky to survive, let alone level up in the dungeon. Not only had Samsara and his people leveled up, but they had also done so multiple times, reaching level 81. How could she possibly believe this wasn't some kind of illusion? You've reached level 81? No wonder why you finally dared to emerge, Sandbone said after snapping out of his daze, but rather than feel intimidated, his excitement grew as he looked at the small party. It seems that Brother Sky was right. The Thunder God's secret key is crucial for conquering the Thunder God's secret land. Once we obtain that key, we'll pull ahead of the various super guilds experts. Even the Flower of Seven Sins had been helpless within the side temple, but Samsara and his comrades had leveled with flying speeds in the dungeon. Sandbone could only think of one reason for this situation. The Thunder God's secret key. Originally, Sandbone had only considered the Thunder God's secret land as a good place to find treasure, but after seeing this, he realized that this secret land was a heavenly leveling spot, as well. To think that the Thunder God's secret key has such an ability, as well. We have to get our hands on it. Diverging Phoenix's eyes also glowed with excitement when she considered the possibility. Blood guards, ignore the guilds, and help me get rid of those players first. The 20 blood guards promptly broke away from their opponents and charged towards Samsara's party. Should we help them, Vice Temple Master? Ruthless Sky asked Melody as the blood guards changed targets. Help them. The magic barrier affects us, too. The blood guards will likely return their attention to us once they eliminate Black Flame's team. If we want to enter the main temple, we'll have to work with Black Flame, Melody said. Ruthless Sky nodded in response. He agreed that the Flower of Seven Sins wasn't likely to let them go after killing Shifeng and his companions. Moreover, with how powerful Shifeng's team was, they'd have a better chance against the Blood Guards if they cooperated. Ruthless Sky immediately led a small detachment to help Shifeng's team. Melody then led the rest of the Sacred Temple's team to distract the Flower of Seven Sins ranged members. However, the Blood Guards were clearly a fraction faster than Ruthless Sky's team, and the gap between them grew. After a short moment, the Blood Guards stood within 30 yards of Shifeng's team, spreading out to surround the players. I want to see how you plan to escape us this time. Diverging Phoenix snarled. Glaring at Shifeng, she commanded, prioritize the healers. And be careful of Black Flame. His strength is very high. Understood. Hearing Diverging Phoenix's command, the Blood Guards turned their focus to Samsara's healers. Seeing the Blood Guards in position, Ruthless Sky shouted, be careful. Those Blood Guard strengths are absurd. If they get close to you, you're finished. After fighting the Blood Guards himself, he knew how powerful they were. Even he would have been at a disadvantage in a one-on-one fight without the help of his bronze combat technique. And yet, Shifeng and his comrades showed no intention of moving even as the Blood Guards moved within 20 yards of the team's healers. It made Ruthless Sky nervous. He felt that Shifeng and the others were being overconfident and careless. You're not going to flee? Do you think you can stand against us just because you're level 81? Diverging Phoenix sneered at Shifeng as his team prepared to face the Blood Guards head-on. The Blood Guards' basic attributes were even higher than the Flower of Seven Sins cadre members, especially their strength attribute. Not even Sandbone was a match for their strength. Trying to face the Blood Guards head-on in the Thunder God's secret land was the epitome of foolishness. By the time the Blood Guards were within 10 yards of the small party, Endless Scars had finished casting her spell from behind Shifeng. Immediately, over 100 magic blades shot toward the approaching Blood Guards. What a powerful offensive spell! At such a close distance, it would normally be quite effective, but against the Blood Guards. Ruthless Sky felt his scalp tingle when he saw the 100+ magic bladed under Endless Scar's control. The closer a target was, the easier they'd be to hit with a spell, but when attacking expert players with superb strength and speed, such a powerful spell would backfire on the caster. Expert players could use the spell to propel themselves forward and instantly shorten the gap between them and the caster. And sure enough, the Blood Guards showed no intentions of dodging the incoming magic blades, raising their weapons to receive the magical projectiles. The instant the magic blades crashed into the Blood Guards' weapons, however. Boom! A series of explosions shook the battlefield, immediately halting the Blood Guards' advance. The outcome stunned these strangely demonic players. They certainly hadn't expected the magic blades to be so powerful, and before the Blood Guards could react, the remaining magic blades split into pairs and merged, attacking once more. These Blood Guards were no weaklings, though, and they readied their weapons to defend themselves against the new wave of attacks. Boom! As if they had been hit by a truck, the 20 Blood Guards were thrown through the air, landing over 8 yards away with damages in the hundreds appearing above their heads. The weapons in their grips trembled violently. Surprised by the outcome, the battlefield fell silent. Chapter 2208, Overwhelming the Blood Guards. How are her attacks so powerful? Shock colored both Diverging Phoenix's and Sandbone's faces as they watched a single attack repel the Blood Guards. After their transformation, those players wielded strength that could rival great lords of the same level within the Thunder God's secret land. Even Diverging Phoenix and Sandbone would have to rely on advanced combat techniques to stand against the Blood Guards. Diverging Phoenix had fought Endless Scars personally, so she knew how powerful those magic blades were, and they definitely weren't a match for a great lord's attacks. At best, Endless Scars' standard was roughly on par with Diverging Phoenix's. However, after emerging from the side temple, Endless Scars' magic blades were powerful enough to rival the Blood Guards' attacks. Moreover, she could now merge 40 of her black blades to send the 20 Blood Guards flying. Endless Scars' current basic attributes and combat standards were on an entirely different level than before she had entered the side temple. Even the various superpowers experts gaped in shock after seeing the incredible attack. Who is she? Ruthless Sky muttered as he tried to recall the formidable caster, but no matter how hard he searched for her in his memory, he couldn't find a trace of Endless Scars. Endless Scars had repelled the 20 Blood Guards in one move. The Blood Guards had even suppressed the superpowers peak experts, yet Endless Scars had single-handedly thrown the players. Moreover, Ruthless Sky had recognized the technique she had employed, strength combination. Ruthless Sky knew the technique and just how challenging it was to execute. With his combat standards, controlling 4 or 5 combination attacks was his limit, yet Endless Scars had controlled 20 combination attacks. She was a monster. So, this is her true strength? Shifeng also could not help his astonishment as he watched Endless Scars manipulate the magic blades. Although the Thunderbolt set had restored Endless Scars to Tier 1, a Tier 1 player's physique wasn't sufficient to allow a peak expert to control 20 combination attacks. Not even Shifeng could accomplish the feat. But when Shifeng thought back to how Endless Scars had held the #1 position on the God's Domain Experts list in the past and been responsible for numerous miracles, such as defeating Tier 6 God-ranked players as a Tier 5 player, he found the current situation quite reasonable. Only, Endless Scars' performance had further excited Diverging Phoenix and Sandbone. The fact that Samsara and the others had leveled so quickly in the side temple was astonishing, but they had never thought that players could increase their overall strength so quickly in the dungeon, as well. This only fanned the flames of their desire to obtain the Thunder God's secret key. Kill them. We need to kill them no matter the cost. Diverging Phoenix shouted as she focused on Samsara. The woman then began to cast the strongest spell in her arsenal. Sandbone, on the other hand, charged toward Samsara. With Diverging Phoenix's command to go all out, the 20 blood guards revealed maddened expressions as the dark fog around them grew more intense, and their auras grew stronger. These players' figures blurred as they rushed at Shifeng and his teammates. Suddenly, the blood guards were at least 30% faster, and their reaction speeds had improved drastically. The blood guards could now deflect Endless Scar's attacks, and some of them even had the leeway to dodge. How has their movement speed and reaction speed risen so much? Endless Scars could feel that these blood guards had suddenly become much stronger, especially regarding their physiques. Crap. These blood guards weren't this strong when we fought them earlier. The various superpowers experts, who had moved to reinforce Shifeng's team, revealed grim expressions as the blood guards became even more of a challenge. Humiliation. Anger. Powerlessness. The majority of them were flowing water realm experts, and a few were even void realm experts. Even the various superpowers would have to be cautious around them in the outside world, and yet, these blood guards had only been toying with them during the previous fight. In a split second, the blood guards had reached Samsara and his melee comrades. However, Samsara and his team were no weaklings. Now that they had reached level 81, their epic equipment had improved, as well. Including the Thunderbolt gemstones they wore, their basic attributes were only slightly lower than the blood guards, and with their combat standards, they had no issues facing the blood guards in one-on-one combat. They could even take on two at once, albeit barely. Naturally, Shifeng had an overwhelming advantage against these blood guards. He was level 85, 2 minor thresholds above the level 77 blood guards, and he currently had multiple fragmented legendary items on him. Even though his tier had been reduced to 0, his basic attributes were leaps and bounds higher than the blood guards. As a result, Shifeng practically sent a blood guard flying with every swing of his blade. Shifeng didn't even take damage when 6 blood guards had ganged up on him. On the contrary, the 6 blood guards continuously lost HP as they clashed with Shifeng. If the Flower of Seven Sins healers hadn't frantically cast their healing spells, the 6 blood guards would have fallen after exchanging a few moves. Even so, Shifeng still found an opportunity to activate Flame Burst and kill 2 of the blood guards instantly. His display was even fiercer than Endless Scars, and the remaining blood guards felt an immense pressure weigh on them after witnessing his performance. Is Black Flame even stronger than the rumors made him out? It looks like they can kill these blood guards even without our help. The various superpowers experts were at a loss for words as they watched Shifeng and his team overwhelm the blood guards. They finally realized why Zero Wing openly dared to provoke multiple superpowers. With such a powerful team, Zero Wing certainly qualified to do so. Meanwhile, when Ruthless Sky and the various superpowers other experts eventually joined the fray, the blood guards steadily lost their advantage. Phoenix, at this rate, it'll be our lives on the line. The blood guard's stamina won't last much longer. Sandbone, who pinned down Burning Sea, shouted to Diverging Phoenix. The blood guard's transformation was already a heavy burden on their stamina. Now that they had improved their physiques further, their stamina consumption rate had reached frightening levels. This was why these blood guards avoided casually using this move. I know. Diverging Phoenix growled back. She couldn't help but grind her teeth in fury as she glared at Shifeng. Black Flame. I'll admit that you're quite impressive to push us this far, but this ends here. Diverging Phoenix pulled a piece of parchment from her bag space. It looked like a relic, but the moment she revealed this parchment, its energy pulled everyone's attention to it. The parchment radiated horrific divine might that made everyone's bodies feel heavier. Moreover, the parchment transformed its surrounding space into its own territory, and the Thunder God's secret land's rules no longer applied within the affected area. Diverging Phoenix began to chant an incantation, and skeletal warriors in exquisite armor, wielding all sorts of weapons, began to emerge from the void. The skeletal warrior's equipment had been engraved with magic runes, and every piece shared a similar pattern. Based on the equipment's glow, it was obvious that these undead creatures wore epic set equipment, far better than many of the peak experts present. After 3 short seconds, a total of 12 skeletal warriors had surrounded Diverging Phoenix. Heroic Warrior, Undead, Tier 3 Berserker King. Level 88. HP 28,000,000/28,000,000. How is this possible? Everyone gasped when they saw the heroic warriors. The Thunder God's secret land did not permit players to use tools, yet Diverging Phoenix had done just that. Moreover, she hadn't just summoned ordinary monsters. These creatures rivaled NPCs and Tier 3 NPCs, at that. Black Flame, I really hadn't expected you to force me to use this trump card, but no matter how much stronger you've grown in the side temple, it means nothing before the Flower of 7 Sins. Diverging Phoenix hissed as she glared daggers at Shifeng. The tool she had just used wasn't an easy one. Once she activated the parchment, she would be cursed, and her soul would enter a weakened state for a long time, preventing her from improving herself. After her comment, Diverging Phoenix ordered her heroic warriors to slay Shifeng and his comrades. Is that so? Glancing at the 12 heroic warriors, Shifeng retrieved the Thunder Eagle's summoning flute and blew in it. Chapter 2209, Powerful Flying Mount. The moment Shifeng blew into the flute, a gigantic, silver magic array manifested above him. After a few seconds, a 10-meter-tall eagle with light blue feathers emerged, surrounded by dancing arcs of electricity. The eagle announced its arrival with a deafening screech that echoed throughout the area around the Thunder Temple. An intense pressure bore down on every player in the area, even forcing the heroic warriors that charged at Shifeng's group to pause for a moment. Even the heroic warriors charging at Shifeng's group could not help but stop momentarily. What? Black Flame can summon a monster, too? I thought tools couldn't be used in the Thunder God's secret land? Level 100. Crap. Black Flame summoned a level 100 Great Lord. What's the point of summoning a level 100 Great Lord? The Flower of 7 Sins has 12 level 88, Tier 3 undead. Although Shifeng's ability to summon such a high-leveled monster surprised the various superpowers experts, they inwardly shook their heads. Level 100 was a very high level, but the Thunder Eagle was only a Great Lord. Even if it was individually stronger than the heroic warriors, there was a limit to its strength. At most, it could take on 2 or 3 heroic warriors simultaneously. Meanwhile, the remaining heroic warriors would work alongside the Flower of 7 Sins members to slay the rest of them. When Samsara and his teammates saw the Thunder Eagle, however, shock and envy filled their hearts. They had never thought that the Flying Mount would start out as a Great Lord. It was far stronger than what Land Mount started as. Not only could Shifeng use his Thunder Eagle as aerial transportation, but it could also serve as a true combat companion. Even after reaching Tier 3, the Thunder Eagle would be useful. In comparison, current land mounts could only assist ordinary experts and weaker players. They were simply excess baggage to experts of their caliber. So, this is a flying mount? I'll need to get one for myself later, Endless Scars inwardly swore as she gazed up at the Thunder Eagle. The rest of the team shared her silent sentiment. The Thunder Eagle's Tier 3 combat power could help them accomplish many things that had been impossible before. Black Flame, it seems you're at your wit's end. Do you really think one Great Lord can save you? Diverging Phoenix laughed when she saw the Thunder Eagle. Since you think that's the case, you can bear witness to the power of my heroic warriors. Diverging Phoenix controlled 6 of her heroic warriors to attack the Thunder Eagle while she sent the remaining creatures after Shifeng and the others. Diverging Phoenix is being quite cautious, sending 6 heroic warriors after that eagle. The creature is doomed, now. Melody, who saw this from afar, could not help but despair. The Sacred Temple had uncovered some information regarding heroic warriors. Heroic warriors weren't like ordinary monsters, they were more akin to NPCs. They had their own skills and spells, and when enough of them worked together, the heroic warriors could exhibit even greater combat power. 6 cooperating heroic warriors could even take down a Grand Lord of the same level. Although the Thunder Eagle was 12 levels higher than the heroic warriors, its basic attributes should, at best, be on par with a level 88 Grand Lord. It wouldn't be of any help to Shifeng. Just one Great Lord? Shifeng chuckled at Diverging Phoenix's comment. You sure are taking a level 100 monster lightly. In that case, I'll show you how immense the difference is. Shifeng immediately instructed his Thunder Eagle to attack the approaching heroic warriors. With a flap of its massive wings, the Thunder Eagle sent hundreds of lightning bolts arching toward the 6 heroic warriors. Reacting quickly, the heroic warriors tried to activate skills to defend themselves. Boom! 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 The flying mount was incredibly fast, practically crossing 100 yards in an instant as it crashed into the 6 heroic warriors that were about to attack, sending all 6 Tier 3 undead flying another 20 yards back. The heroic warriors were utterly powerless against the Thunder Eagle. For a time, the various experts were dumbfounded. These powerful, NPC-like, Tier 3 heroic warriors were little more than helpless children before the Thunder Eagle, which was the same tier. Impossible. My heroic warriors are Tier 3. Diverging Phoenix shouted in shock as she watched the summoned creatures suffer an absolute disadvantage. Both the heroic warriors and Thunder Eagle were Tier 3, so how could the gap between them be so large? That flying mount is too powerful. I'll have to get one for myself when I return. Burning Sea could barely stop his jaw from hanging open as he watched the Thunder Eagle's performance. How was this a Great Lord? The Thunder Eagle was almost stronger than Grand Lords. It was nearly as powerful as a mythic monster. Big Brother Black Flame, you must treat us to a meal after we get out of here. Happy Art said, her eyes glued on the Thunder Eagle. She had known that flying mounts were powerful, but she had never dreamed that they would be this powerful. If she had a Thunder Eagle as her companion, she could easily solo Grand Lords out in the fields. Sure, no problem, Shifeng replied, chuckling. Every 50 levels was a major threshold in God's domain. Not only would players' weapons and equipment undergo a qualitative transformation, but monsters would grow stronger, as well. Meanwhile, level 100 was the second major threshold in the game, and it was a far greater one than level 50. To be precise, level 100 was a major turning point when it came to monsters' basic attributes. Everything, including the monster's HP, strength, and agility, would undergo a qualitative transformation. In comparison, there wasn't much of a difference when it came to players' equipment. After reaching level 100, the main God system stopped sheltering players and fully removed its binding on God's domain's monsters. When players in the past had begun to explore level 100 maps, many Tier 2 players had been demoted to commoners. Even killing chieftain-ranked monsters would require full parties or teams of Tier 2 experts, not to mention Lord-ranked monsters. This was why it was so dangerous for Tier 2 players to explore level 100 maps. Normally, only Tier 3 players could afford to roam these areas by themselves. Although the Thunder Eagle was only a Great Lord, its basic attributes were roughly 2 tiers higher than the heroic warriors. It might not be a match for level 88 mythic monsters, but it could rival level 88 Grand Lord ranked archaic species. How could the Tier 3 heroic warriors possibly be a match for the Thunder Eagle? The first heroic warrior fell after just 20 seconds. The remaining 5 only had half of their HPs remaining as they tried to deal with the Thunder Eagle. The Flower of 7 Sins healers couldn't keep up with the Thunder Eagle's damage. In contrast, the Flying Mount still had 93% of its HP remaining. The Thunder Eagle's strength and the heroic warriors were on entirely different levels. It was only a matter of time before the feathered creature annihilated the skeletal monsters. Retreat! Everyone retreat! Diverging Phoenix commanded, gritting her teeth. It was obvious that the Flower of 7 Sins no longer controlled this situation. Once the Thunder Eagle finished off the heroic warriors, it would doubtlessly set its sights on her and the other Flowers members. In the outside world, they might be able to take it down, but they were in the Thunder God's secret land, where the Thunder Eagle was basically invincible. Don't think you can get away that easily. You won't leave here alive. As Diverging Phoenix and her people tried to flee into the main temple, Shifeng activated Wind Blade and gave chase. He was far faster than his opponents, and once he was within 40 yards of Diverging Phoenix, he activated Instant Strike to appear before the Elementalist. Swords Transmigration. Diverging Phoenix wanted to defend herself, but her physical control was hanging by a thread since her soul had been weakened. She simply couldn't block or evade Killing Ray in time. Shifeng's blade bit into the woman, and her HP fell to 0 instantly. Collapsing as she died, she dropped 2 items, a pair of dark gold ranked cloth gloves and the parchment she had used to summon the heroic warriors. Cooldown, 5 natural days. A weakened soul cannot conduct the summoning. Skill 2 dash. Soul Absorption, absorbs the souls of half-dead creatures for a chance to generate a drop of soul essence. Cooldown, 6 hours. Stronger targeted creatures increase the chances of generating soul essence. Skill 3 dash. Soul Strengthening, consumes soul essence to strengthen a creature's soul. Cooldown, 1 natural day. Stronger targeted creatures require more soul essence for soul strengthening. This item is bound to the owner's soul and cannot be traded or stored in a warehouse. This fragment also has a chance of dropping on death. Drops on death if in a weakened soul state. Amazing. Truly amazing. Indescribable shock and excitement filled Shifeng as he finished reading the Ancient Gods Literature Fragments attribute panel. It's no wonder why those powers contested over these literature fragments so desperately. If a single fragment can exhibit such power, how much power does a complete volume offer? Summon Heroic Spirit was a godly skill against current expert players. The combat power 12 Tier 3 NPCs wielded would be no trivial matter. If not for the level 100 threshold, the Thunder Eagle would never have been a match for the 12 heroic warriors. However, Shifeng valued the soul strengthening skill far more than the Summon Heroic Spirit skill. Current players might not truly understand the importance and meaning of their souls, but as they continued to level up and encountered far more NPCs and monsters, they would figure it out. Without a powerful soul, players had no hope of reaching Tier 5, much less Tier 6. Moreover, the soul strengthening skill clearly stated that it could be used on creatures. In other words, the skill wasn't limited to players, affecting NPCs as well. In NPCs, their souls represented their potential. The stronger an NPC's soul was, the more growth potential it would have. Higher growth potential also meant that NPCs would have an easier time reaching higher tiers. At this stage of the game, personal guards were a common sight. However, there were very few personal guards with high growth potential. Even first-rate guilds would celebrate if they obtained another Secret Silver Guard. First, Secret Silver Guards wielded incredible combat power. If they had level and equipment advantages, they could easily suppress current peak experts. Second, Secret Silver ranked personal guards wouldn't reach a bottleneck when reaching for Tier 3. Once they rose to level 100, they'd have no problem advancing to the next tier. Moreover, they had a chance of reaching Tier 4. At Tier 4, not only would personal guards be a massive help when defending guild towns or cities, but they'd also be meat grinders in large-scale combat. However, obtaining a Secret Silver personal guard was extraordinarily difficult. Even Zero Wing only had 22 Secret Silver Guards, and that was largely thanks to Shifeng's past knowledge of these guards. Otherwise, Zero Wing wouldn't even have 10 Secret Silver Guards right now. However, obtaining NPCs with high growth potential wouldn't be a problem now that he had the soul strengthening skill. Secret Silver Guards might be difficult to find, but mysterious Iron Guards were abundantly available. Once he collected enough soul essence, he could nurture a powerful NPC army, reinforcing Zero Wing until it could easily stand up against superpowers. While Shifeng pondered on the potential of a personal guard army, the battle with the Flower of Seven Sins had come to a close. Over half of the Flower of Seven Sins players had died in the battle, and every one of them had been a cadre member in the organization. Furthermore, 15 of the 20 Blood Guards had died. It was a tremendous loss to the Flower of Seven Sins. The organization would most likely need a long time to recover. Meanwhile, the various superpowers would have long since stabilized their positions in the Thunder God's secret land. Big Brother Black Flame, the blood magic seal has lifted, and the superpowers people have entered the temple. We should hurry in, as well, Happy Art ecstatically reported as the barrier around them faded. The Thunder Temple's main temple was the most important location within the Thunder God's secret land. It was also their team's true goal. If the side temple had so many awesome items to offer, she couldn't even imagine what waited in the main temple. Alright, let's move out, then, Shifeng said, nodding. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.